That was horrible.
I just got back from the doctor.
Yeah, it's been a minute. That was a long doctor trip. People don't typically go to the doctor for like a whole week.
And, I was there for something. You know what I was there for?
What were you there for?
I was just a little crooked, man.
You were just a little crooked, like your spine?
Yeah, man.
Derek, do you have scoliosis? Is that...
And boy, was I in hell, because the way I was
Thank you for
feeling-
joining us for our Scoliosis Awareness Week. We're here to talk to Derek, a crooked man who has been through hell.
Oh, man. I was just...
Derek, tell us your story. The world is waiting to know.
I was so crooked, man. Did you get it?
I got it. I was hoping you would play more in the space.
Do you want me? I'll keep going.
Tell me more about your crooked man experience. It must have been hell.
Yeah, so
boy.
it was horrible. There was a big spider, and it was there.
What did that have to do with your scoliosis?
I don't know.
It scared you so bad you got scoliosis, like twisting, cowering away from it.
Oh, absolutely. And
it made you crooked.
the craziest thing keeps happening to me when... Oh, I'm sorry. I need to go back into the space where I'm really awful. to listen to.
Terrible.
I just, every time I pick up a bag or a gun or anything, it just sounds like celery.
I mean,
and it's just...
Listen, this is really what sells tickets. This is it's that sad factor. This is what sells tickets, though. It's exactly like that one guy in that episode of SpongeBob where he's like, I have paper bones and glass skin or something like that. Where he's like, and that's what helps him sell chocolate bars. This is going to sell our podcast.
You're right.
We're really sad scoliosis crooked man, Derek.
Yeah. So it's like if NPR got hired into a plane.
It's like if someone who worked on NPR, you literally woke them up in bed and put a microphone in front of them right
that's
now.
why I was talking so
Good morning,
slow.
Derek. Here's a microphone. Talking to it.
Oh, no, I'm just so crooked, man.
I love that before we started recording, Derek goes, I think I got an idea for the cold open.
And the whole idea was someone saying, I'm so crooked, man.
But that's it. That's all you have.
Do you want me to have more? We can go back. We can start over.
We can start over again. Yeah. So start from the beginning. So it all started when you were born.
Yeah,
were you born a crooked man?
No.
There were
When I saw a
spiders?
spider. And this bit is so stupid. Isaac, co-host of the podcast.
Welcome, Derek, co-host of the podcast. Thanks for joining me again.
Where That Was Horrible.
We are That Was Horrible, where we do our best
at reviewing
the worst in
No, you can't
spiders
say
and crooked.
the worst. We're reviewing.
We do our best at reviewing.
Yeah,
Is that what we do now? Period.
Reviewing.
We do our best at reviewing.
We really do. Do we review anything? So, name the last 3 things you reviewed.
We reviewed, I've been watching some movies. So I reviewed The Lighthouse was great. I watched that one.
Nice.
And I reviewed something else, The House of the Devil. I watched that one too. We're in the month of October. Welcome to spooky season. It's a great time. So Derek and I have been watching tons of horror movies.
Too many, man.
Too many.
Love horror movies, but I've been watching a lot of horror movies. It's all I'm watching.
And that's the thing. I don't know. There's been actually a lot of talk this year about horror fatigue because we've mentioned a couple times now.
Yeah.
This 2024 cranking out some horror movies, nonstop horror,
nonstop. So I keep lists,
and I'm loving it.
I keep lists on Letterboxd, right? Of the movies that I'm watching throughout the year. I keep a constant ranking because I'm insane. 55 movies I have ranked from 2024 currently. 31 of those are horror films.
That's more than half of those movies.
So 20. You're telling me that only 24 movies I watched this year
have not been horror.
horror.
That's insane.
And I can't even think of one. Napoleon?
Yeah.
Was that this year?
That's fair. See, I'm at that point of the year, too, where I'm like, you're telling me that movie was released this year?
I don't know if it was. I think that was actually
I don't
last
remember.
year.
I watched a movie called Destroy All Neighbors, and that was released this year, too. And
I watched that movie.
That felt like it was 2 years ago at this point.
It
But
does.
there's been a lot of people talking about horror fatigue because there's been so much. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that at all. I'm feeling fatigued from watching so many movies.
I think that's
a little bit.
That's a better way of
but not
putting where I'm
horror
at.
specifically.
I'm not tired. I'm just tired of watching movies.
Yeah.
But I'm not at the same time because all I can think about is the next movie I want to watch.
When you put on a horror challenge for yourself, it becomes a little tough, right? When you're like, I'm going to watch a horror movie every single day. Even just doing that with a movie, I'm going to take time out of my schedule, watch a movie.
Yeah.
Movies are long sometimes, and that can be fatiguing. I miss watching movies just when I wanted to, not when I was forcing myself to enjoy movies.
Absolutely. Well, have you seen any fun movies in the last couple weeks?
The last couple weeks, I watched a movie that was actually released this year called Exhuma. It's a South Korean film that was released just this year. It's fun. I enjoy watching foreign films because it's like they go different different ways than you're used to. You know, they do things, and it is sincerely a movie that like I did not have any idea where it was going to go, because like Derek hasn't watched it yet. He's probably about to.
I am going to.
We have to watch it because, you know, it was released this year as a horror movie,
and it's one people are talking about too.
Yeah, it's actually really, really good. But it's like, it's a movie where about an hour into the movie, you're like, well, that could be the end of it. That could just be the end of the movie. So it's like, what's going to be for the next like hour and 15 minutes of this movie? And then it keeps going and keeps taking these turns you were not expecting. And it was like actually really enjoyable.
And you liked that about it.
Yeah, no, I did. I really liked it. Yeah, because I went in and I was like, I don't know if I'm on board. Then I was like, okay, no, I can kind of get down with this. Is that not the end of it? Oh, we're okay. Now that's...
Yeah.
Sure, we're right on. Yeah, so that was
that.
kind of one that stuck out to me in the last like couple weeks of watching. What about you?
I mean, I also watched a ton of movies. We watched Terrifier 3. We already talked about
Yes.
that. Go check out our Terrifier 3 review if you haven't. And I also watched, what was it? Oh, I watched It's What's Inside. That's the one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, you haven't even told me about this one.
This is the one that everyone was saying it looked like Talk to Me.
That's
it was
right,
about the
that's
people
right.
at a party and something weird happened.
Mhm.
But the gimmick of that one isn't like a hand that you shake and you go into another dimension or whatever. It's similar to that, but it's a game that a bunch of people play. They basically play Mafia, but they use this device to go inside each other's bodies. So it
Interesting.
randomly puts you inside one of your friends' bodies.
Okay, that's fun, I think.
It's weird.
Yeah.
And they get kind of addicted to it. And anyway, I actually highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It goes places I didn't really think it was going to go. It was just fun. It was, and like the third act twist was came kind of out of left field. It's one of those excuse me, sorry. It was it was kind of one of those twists that you don't see coming, and then you're like, how did I not see that coming?
Yeah, but those are also kind of fun because like there are movies like that where like they kind of twist that expectation. It should have been obvious, but it wasn't. Yeah. Which is nice because then, like there's the opposite that's never fun, where it's like, oh, that was so obvious. Oh, they just did the obvious thing. I called that from a mile away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those are pretty fun.
Two more movies I want to mention.
Two more movies.
Do you have more movies you want to mention?
I'd have to. Yeah, you mention yours while I try to find mine.
Woman of the Hour, it just released. It's Anna Kendrick's new film. It's about
true events, right?
Yes, and it's about the dating game, the TV show that like that improv game was based off of.
Right.
So it's about a guy who went on there who was a murderer, and it's one of it's about the woman who was the contestant on that show. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. The reason I bring it up is because it wasn't necessarily horror. It was definitely more thriller. It had horror elements, but it was the first serial killer movie I think I've ever seen that didn't exploit the victims.
Yes.
There was no exploitation at all.
That's a huge problem with like true crime, any of that kind of stuff going on right now, right?
Yeah, and I talked about this in my review on Letterboxd, where I was basically like, it's the complete opposite of Dahmer, where Dahmer was a great show, don't get me wrong, but like it really overly exploited what he did. It overexploited his crimes, and it didn't focus on the people, right? This movie did the complete opposite of that, where it was like, no, here we have these women who were brutally murdered by this man, and we're going to focus on them and not this scumbag piece of shit.
Yeah.
And we're not going to over glorify the killing. Like there's nothing really extreme about it at all. Nothing is really shown, which I really appreciate. It had a lot of reservation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of movies that do those kinds of things with those serial killers. It's almost like, are you trying to get me to like sympathize with this person?
Exactly.
Like,
and that was my issue. My huge issue with Dahmer was everyone started simping over the guy.
Exactly.
Where you're like, no, that he would have hated that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not doing what he wanted.
You're
and
going
plus,
about this
this
terribly.
is big problem. Big, huge problem. Anyway, this movie did not do that. It was Anna Kendrick's first directorial debut.
Yep.
She did a phenomenal job. There were a lot of really...
She starred in it too, right?
Yeah, she was the main character. And directed it. She did not write it, but she just directed and starred in it. And I thought she did a phenomenal job. One more movie I want to mention.
Yeah.
Connor O'Malley. If you don't know who Connor O'Malley is, he was
an interesting guy.
He was a weird man. He wrote for the show with Seth Meyers' talk show for a long time, and then he was also in I Think You Should Leave, and he was in Late Night. Joe Pera. Joe Pera Talks to You.
Yeah.
He is so strange. He just dropped a movie called Rap World that he just dropped the entire movie on YouTube. The movie,
like a short film or like
no, it's a full ass movie.
Wow,
and
okay.
It's ending up being one of my favorite movies of the year, and I don't want to say that because I don't really understand why. It takes place in 2009. It's a group of friends who decide they're going to get super drunk and record their escapades as they record an entire rap album in one evening.
Okay, yeah.
That movie was like the epitome of Chekhov's gun and like all of 2009's craziness.
Yeah.
And I felt so much nostalgia. There's a scene in that movie, to not spoil anything, where they're all hanging out in the basement trying to record this rap album. And the mom of one of the guys comes downstairs and just starts yelling at the son for like being loud and doing all this stuff. I felt like I was there.
Yeah.
I've been that kid at a sleepover.
Well, there's someone
in
like the kid's mom is yelling at them.
Yeah, and the kid's mom is yelling at
It's like, what do you do in that situation? You just awkwardly sit there.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
No.
So anyway, I recommend that movie. It was super weird, but
Yeah.
it worked for me. Anyway, you have movies you want to talk about?
I mean, I watched a couple of good ones. I watched Ginger Snaps, which is a pretty iconic like werewolf movie from the year like 2000, and it was a fun take on werewolf movies. It was kind of like one of my favorites as far as werewolf things and tropes go. It kind of it plays differently with a lot of those fun things, and the main characters are women in this one, because I feel like most werewolf movies have a man be the wolf thing, right? And so I kind of like the fact that this one was women. There's a lot of like feminist conversation to be had about that movie. And then I also watched just recently The House of the Devil, directed by Ty West, which is really fun. It's a movie that was released in 2009, but the way it is edited and like the filter put over it makes it look like it's from the 70s, and the vibe of it is a very 70s horror movie. But it was pretty enjoyable. It kind of like, I was talking to Derek about it. It's like if there was a film class in college that had a really promising student in the class. And so like whatever they put out, it's like a college level short film vibe to it, but it's a bit better, like there's promise here. You've got something. And I kind of feel like that was the vibe of it. Definitely a slow burn. Things don't pick up to the last like literally 20 minutes of the movie.
Oh yeah. That movie's kind of almost boring.
Yeah.
But it's captivating enough to keep you going.
But it somehow doesn't drag. Like, actually, we got to those last 20 minutes pretty quick, in my opinion. I wasn't like sitting there like being like, God, when is this movie going to be over?
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, we're this far into the movie and just now things are picking up. Like, things get pretty crazy. But yeah, that was a pretty enjoyable time.
It was fun.
Yeah, but this week we didn't have to force ourselves to watch one of those movies. Instead, we forced ourselves to watch Hellboy, the Crooked Man, released in 2024.
Is that why I was doing that bit about being a crooked man?
Remember from earlier when we were talking about, crooked
Hellboy,
men and it's hell and there are spiders and things like that. So yeah, this one was released this year, 2024, Hellboy. This is our third go around with the boy from hell, ladies and gentlemen.
Fourth.
I mean, yes, technically, but the third like new actor playing Hellboy, I guess, because there are four live action movies that currently exist. The first two starring Ron Perlman as Hellboy, and I'm sorry, guys, you'll hear me talk about this a lot probably throughout this episode. He is just my de facto Hellboy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So good at it. The voice is right, the way he carries the character, the way he loves the character, all of that. Ron Perlman is my favorite, and it's also backed, by the fact that Guillermo del Toro directed those first two Hellboy movies.
We can start talking about it right now. I think that this is why there can never be another Wolverine.
Yes.
Because Hugh Jackman set such a high standard for what Wolverine is.
Like the rest of history, because we know he's going to be recast someday. They're never going to let Marvel die.
No, of course.
And so it's like, we're going to have to accept a new Wolverine at some point, but like, I don't know if I can.
Do you think that when the first James Bond switched over, do you think people felt that same way? Because for a long time,
tough.
James Bond was just the one guy. I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on his name.
And
I
think it's also because I think it's at the rate that it happens, right? Because like there were, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like I'm curious how much time there was between the first Bond and the second Bond, because I feel like you can kind of get to a point where it's like generationally you're like, oh, this is my James Bond because this is what I grew up with, kind of thing. All of us have grown up with Hugh Jackman as our Wolverine for the past like 20 or so years.
That's true. I mean, okay, so maybe it is a little bit different because Sean Connery was James Bond until from 1962 to 1967. And then it was
5 years.
George Lazenby was one time.
A one-time shot.
And then it was still Sean Connery. And then Roger Moore took over. Okay, so now that's a decade. Sean Connery was
a decade of Bond.
And then it switched over to Roger Moore, who was then for 2 decades almost.
Wow, okay.
And then Timothy Dalton took over after that and then went into Pierce Brosnan era.
Yeah, I think it's tough because we don't have enough of them yet. I feel like if we had like 2 or 3 different Wolverines, we could start to have that conversation, I guess. Because I mean, like, it's just like there's Spider-Man, right? Like there was Tobey Maguire, then there was Andrew Garfield, and now Tom Holland. There's debate about those kinds of things.
And It's weird.
But it's tough because you're always going to be compared to that first one, right? Like every
you
Bond
are.
is probably compared to the Sean Connery, the original.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
But they all take their own place. I think maybe the difference here with Hellboy
Yes.
is they're all trying to be the exact same.
Yes. They're all
Right?
fighting for the same thing, not their own unique spin on it, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard. You're the first one that gets in there, does a kick-ass job like Ron Perlman. It's kind of hard to follow that up then if you're just doing the same thing,
There's also
the same
something
character there.
There's also something that feels weird about Hellboy is such like a specific character.
Yes.
There isn't a lot of room for variety.
Yeah, no, he exists as he is, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room there to do different things with his characters. I think he's well written as this strong one thing, straying from that would make him kind of a weird character.
So then, of course, you're going to start comparing.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
contrasting.
right? Because you had Ron Perlman to start out for the first 2 movies. There were 2 Hellboy movies directed by Guillermo del Toro. Then there was the reboot a couple of years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, like 2019,
And that one was
2020, something like that.
Michael Bay. No, David Harbour.
It was David Harbour.
Get it? 'Cause Bay and
yes,
Harbour.
I get you. That's that's a good
you.
one. That's a
I thought
good
that was
joke.
a pretty good
But yeah,
joke.
David Harbour, which I personally appreciated his performance as Hellboy. I don't think he did a bad job, but the story written for that movie was kind of a dumpster fire. Like it was just not a good time.
I just didn't see it.
It's one of those movies that like really struggles to pick whether it is going to be like a serious, like more dramatic take on this, or like a horror comedy kind of thing. And so like when it starts out dramatic, then cuts itself with this like unnecessary comedy that felt like, well, that kind of just cut the tension that you created for us
Right.
here. I didn't really appreciate that. So yeah, I didn't really love those Hellboy movie, or that one singular Hellboy movie. And now we're back again, 2024. We got is it Casey? Kesey? It's Kesy.
It's Taylor Swift's boyfriend. So
That's Travis
Tom
Kelce.
Trammy Coney.
I know you're trying to stay relevant and hip and cool.
Yeah, I'm cool.
He knows Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
I'm
Throwing
so
up weird gang signs. But yeah, so now this is our 3rd iteration of a live action Hellboy, and so we're here to talk about that. Now I'm here to talk to you.
Oh, here
Both
we
of you
are.
fellas here, you saying the horrible, the HE double
we have
hockey
heard
sticks
the
word
boy
many times.
next to a horrible
horrible-
sin of a word. Now I'm gonna say it.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna say
okay.
it. All right. Breast,
breast
yourself.
I'm gonna breast myself.
What the
I'm
fuck?
breasting myself.
All right, Davis Marsha.
All right.
I need you to hear me say hail.
Oh goodness. Oh my.
Terrible word.
Oh, it's
terrible
awful.
word.
You
And-
sound like you kind of liked it a little bit.
Oh, I'm getting
Does it taste good
outed.
on the lips? Maybe I'll take it for a spin. Are you ready? Breast yourself.
I'm breasted.
Breast yourself. I'm gonna say.
I'm breasted.
I'm gonna say hell.
Ooh, it's kind of nice.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Okay. It
Maybe
tingles
I-
on the sides of your tongue a
Maybe
little
the
bit.
devil had something right.
Maybe the devil.
Ooh, I'm so sorry.
This
Woo.
movie, your
It's getting
devil
steamy up in here.
worshipping movies are getting to us again. Sitting here talking about the devil and hell and spiders.
I'm gonna go to John
Crooked Man.
chapter 3. I can't believe I'm doing this again. I'm going to John chapter 3, verse 18.
Pull out your favorite Bible verse of the week.
All right, let's take a look at John
Let's
chapter
see how
3.
it pertains to us in this episode when we're talking about hell.
So John chapter 3 verse 18, whoever believes in him is not condemned. This cannot become a bit. We're going to offend people. If this becomes a
You're
bit.
doing this every episode.
I'm not going to. Just this is the second time. And then
Allow us this one more time.
It was just so crazy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the last episode, Martha Davis pulled out a crazy verse out of nowhere, and it happened to be
Something about
like
tongues.
not speaking terrible things. It was very funny.
I don't even
all right.
remember.
Now, please, Derek, let me speak. Okay, sorry, Davis Marsha.
Yes, please.
All right.
Absolutely. Let the man.
Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Ooh. Are you being...
Lord be my savior. And the devil is in me and lets me say hell.
Whoa,
That-
Marsha Dable.
That just took over. That was something. Whew.
Marsha Dable, that was terrible.
Dable.
Oh my God, Marsha Dable, worship devil.
It's all coming around.
Oh.
There's only one thing that can save us now.
What is it?
The whimsy of a child. Hello, it's me.
I knew you came.
I'm here. I came into the studio today because you guys told me that you would be talking about the devil.
We looked at each other.
You call each other Hellboy.
And for like 3 seconds, we were like, which one of us is going to be a child?
You're watching a movie about Hellboy, so thank you for calling me, and I'm a heaven boy.
Oh, heaven.
It's me, heaven boy.
Oh, my God. You're my little baby who was hit by that truck back when.
Beautiful little cherub who's gone to the angels.
Cherub?
And now I got wings myself, but they're much too big for my little boy body. And so I fly really far away when I do
You're
this.
going far with this.
Wait, why are you laughing at my big wings and my little boy body?
I don't know. Don't fly close to the sun, Icarus.
I'll fly too close. You released a song about that recently, I think.
did, yeah.
So we're here to talk about the hell and how it's bad, and I don't think you should do it.
Oh, God, his neck is crooked.
I'm here to stop you about the
He's
movement.
the crooked
Oh,
boy.
no, I've been the crooked man the whole time.
No, he's the crooked boy.
I'm the crooked boy.
It's Hellman, the crooked boy.
This place is too blasphemous for me. I'm gonna
Blasphemous?
fly. I'm gonna fly away I'm gonna blast away on my big wings. Here I go.
Oh, he's blasting off again.
That character, I felt like was like literally like in my like. I was slippery hands holding onto it the whole time.
Yeah, that was frightening. I kind of got worried for you a little bit.
Heaven Boy cannot return.
No,
I think
Heaven Boy will not return.
Heaven. We're gonna put that at the post credits of our movie.
Hey, what you drinking?
What am I drinking? Well, let's see. I'm gonna summon my good friend here, Bilbo. Tell me all about it.
Hello, it's me, Bilbo Bartender.
Welcome into the studio, Bilbo. You here to talk about the Lord, the good word, or to talk about
Oh,
hell?
I'm definitely going to talk about hell.
Okay, yes. Tell us what's in this nice red concoction here. Very good for Mr. Red himself, Hellboy.
I call it the Hellboy slush.
Slush, two slushes.
2 slushes.
And why is that?
Well, the first slush is your simple mixture of ice and a little bit of strawberry daiquiri.
Mm-hmm.
The other slush is the 1,000 screams you hear whilst driving to hell.
Driving.
Which is New Jersey.
Is the traffic bad on the way to hell? Like, does it take a long time? Is that part of the experience?
No, but I really want to write a concept album called The Traffic's Bad on the Way to Hell.
You know, that's pretty good. And what would you
like-
discuss on it? Like the guy that flipped you off when like you were driving like the speed limit.
Well, and you pass through all the rings, you know, and you see all the different ways that Satan pronounces different words.
Yeah, okay. And you talk about how you all have to like merge into one lane because there was a crash, and it's like, you know, I'm already late. You know, I left with enough time, and now there's traffic.
My least favorite circle of hell is definitely the pronunciation one, though. you come into a classroom and Satan stands there and he says things like garage and garbage and whipped.
And advertisement is another.
Ooh.
Yeah, see, that's a bad one.
Icky.
That's icky,
What's
nasty.
other words? Horror.
Horror. But then at the end of the album, you discover that it's been hell the whole time.
Yeah.
You're not on your way to hell.
Yeah.
This is the experience. It's all wrapped around in itself, right?
Yes.
That's crooked. This is a crooked way to discuss this.
Very good segue. Normally, I'm not
That
here
was
for
terrible.
a segue.
I know. Yeah, you're
This is
typically
interesting.
gone by now.
I'm still here, though. Why am I still here?
I don't know. Do you know how to get back? Did you lose your way?
I'm a little scared. I'm no longer able to leave this vessel.
Can I banish you by saying soupy twist? Did that work?
What just happened?
It didn't. It did.
Am I okay?
Is he? Yeah, he's fine. Okay.
Is he gone?
I now have the power. I have been blessed
So if
to
he ever
to exercise the demon
if
of
he
Bilbo
ever
Bartender.
stays too long,
We can
you can
get
just
him out.
get him out.
Do the old
Thank
like
you.
like the old hook at the edge of the theater. You know, pulling someone away by the neck. I'll give you.
I kind of had a little bit of a substance situation where I feel like he stayed in my body a little too long.
a little longer. Are you
And
feeling okay?
I'm not feeling okay. Something just happened to me.
Yeah, we'll take it easy. We'll take it easy.
Maybe
this
we
time.
should talk about Hellboy the Crooked
I think
Man.
we should talk about Hellboy the Crooked Man. So Hellboy the Crooked Man is an adaptation of an actual like Hellboy story, because thus far there have been things within the Hellboy movies that are like minor calls to things in them. Like specifically, I remember there was a sequence in the David Harbour Hellboy movies that was like a direct call to one of the plot lines where Hellboy goes down to Mexico. It's honestly a pretty good storyline. storyline. But nothing
Is it just called Hellboy that goes to
It's
Mexico?
literally like Hellboy in Mexico or something like that. It's pretty simply named.
Oh, stupid.
But so like there have been some call outs and callbacks to it. For the most part, though, original stories. This one is just directly a 1-to-1, mostly adaptation of a story just called Hellboy the Crooked Man. And I read this a couple months ago. I read it again this morning just to like catch myself up on it again. So I'll be offering little tidbits about like, when and where they differed from these things, Who helped write the screenplay for this one, Derek?
So Hellboy on its own was written by and created by the good man Mike Mignola.
Wonderful artist, wonderful work. He's the one who, originated the designs of the character. This is his thing, right?
Yeah. So The Crooked Man was released in 2008. The original, it was
graphic novel.
3-issue series. It came out starting in July of 2008, ended in September of 2008. So then jump forward 16 years later to 2024 with the release of Hellboy, The Crooked Man.
Yes.
It was actually filmed entirely in last year, 2023, in Bulgaria.
Okay.
It was kind of riddled with issues in production.
Is that right?
Now, I don't know if there's anything in trivia.
I got
about
nothing.
this, but-
Trivia was pretty barren for this one.
So Brian Taylor, he came along. He's
Who's
like,
the director?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
He came along and he's like, I want to make a entire reboot of Hellboy, make it more gritty, make it more close to what I feel when I read the Hellboy comics. So right off the bat, we're doing good where we have someone who is such a big fan.
Yes. And that's usually a good start, right? Someone who has a lot of love for this character feels like previous adaptations have not done a good job. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, let's see you take a swing at it.
So he has done a few other things. We'll talk about Brian Taylor just really quick. He's done a couple other things. He wrote the movie Crank. He directed the movie Crank.
Okay.
Which actually was a fairly well-received movie. And then also the movie Gamer, which was also, it was like mid.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it's like mid reviews.
The one that we both have seen now was Mom and Dad. We wrote and directed
That's
that one.
wild. That's another, if you like Nicolas Cage being a psychopath,
my
that's
God.
another one of those movies.
The whole plot of that movie is all the parents in the world are basically all of a sudden trying to kill their kids.
Just kind of randomly brainwashed and then just want to murder their children.
Yeah. Kind of crazy as hell. Oh, he also
It's wild.
directed Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance.
Okay, that makes sense, actually.
missed that
All
one.
of this tracks, yeah.
Yeah.
But so he comes up to Catch Up Entertainment and puts this movie together, yeah?
Yeah, so Ketchup Entertainment, man.
They've got quite a mix of movies. It's kind of a little moose-bouge of crazy movies in here. You got movies like
Okay, you have it up here.
yeah, what do we got? We got Ferrari was a pretty notable one. That's up
a
in
weird
there,
one
right?
to start because that's like their biggest budget movie.
Which was arguably
And
still a flop, right?
It lost like $40
There's
million.
an animated movie in there called Captain Sabretooth and the Magic Diamond.
Oh, hell yeah, that movie's great.
A really wonderful movie. You guys remember films like Scary Movie or like a superhero movie,
Or disaster movie, a vampire movie.
things along that line, right? Like those really bad parody movies, but like so bad it's funny kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they're also responsible. Ketchup Entertainment is responsible for one of those similar movies called The Starving Games, which was released in like 2014, which is just a whole ripoff of The Hunger Games,
starring Can't Miss Evershot.
Evershot, and it's something, that's for sure. What other movies are up in here? Hypnotic, Lost Christmas, Debug. It's got Jason Momoa in that one. A Royal Night Out. I'm trying to find if there's anything else that is like worth like mention. Super Fast! Exclamation mark! Wow, love that. Wolves, another one. Vehicle 19. Like it's just.
The point is they're not a like well-known distributor of films.
Honestly, when I saw the first trailer for Hellboy the Crooked Man, the first big name that pops up covering the entire screen is Ketchup Entertainment.
So-
it looks fake. It doesn't look like a real production
And
company.
it's spelled ketchup, like the condiment.
Yes, exactly, not catch up.
So do you think it's a subsidiary of Heinz?
Or of Rotten Tomato
Rotten
in the film
Tomato.
industry? Like is
It's Tomato Tower.
is Tomato Tower like sending out little pawns out into the world? Like is this what happens?
It's
like
making its own movies.
it's separating from
so
itself.
that
it's
oh my god!
is
Is it the substance?
it's the substance.
What?
The Mr. Tomato and Tomato Tower took the substance and becomes ketchup.
Oh yeah, that's
But
why
this
it
is
only
like a
releases one movie every other week.
This is like a reverse the substance, so we're like you get worse when you take the substance. We're gonna write that movie.
That's incredible.
It's
If
called
you haven't
the-
seen the substance yet.
It's called
go see
the,
it.
the Dumpstance.
The dumps.
The Dumpstance.
That was
We
bad.
did another episode talking about the substance. So if you haven't watched that one or listened to that one, go check that one out
check
as well.
that out.
It's a really good time.
Or just go see the movie and then listen to it.
yeah.
'Cause that
So
movie kicked ass.
were there any other production issues going on throughout this movie?
It just seems like it was difficult to produce.
It seems like
I
it was-
can't really explain why. It just seems like it was passing by hand. It was problems.
There was like a trailer that was released, and then in several other countries, they were getting much more marketing than we got here in America. A lot more like release dates. Like we were sitting here for a long time, not even sure if it was going to get a theatrical release. And guess what? It did not get a theatrical release. We had to watch this one at home.
So, okay, I'm also seeing now what I was trying to find earlier and couldn't find, and then just found it. So, in February, this movie, it should be noted that this movie released in Bulgaria, like in the theaters.
Yeah.
When it came to America, it just went straight video on demand. It was kind of had some controversy behind it.
Okay.
A practical effect for a film's demon character was disappointing, so he used AI to make replacement creature designs.
I see.
That were then given to the visual effects people, and there hasn't ever been confirmation if they were actually used or not.
I got a thing about the
However,
director kind of commenting on that too.
The director did specifically say that he did not use any AI in the pre-production, or that all the characters were used with practically and not. But that's a little sketch.
Yes.
That has been talked about.
Definitely, absolutely.
I hate that we're in a time now where it's like, did they use AI in their movie?
It's
we
tough.
Don't know.
It's hard.
Because, I mean, I watched a movie a couple days ago, and I liked the movie, and then in the credits it said AI sequence by. And I was like, oh, well, that ruined the entire movie.
Now I got a bad taste in my mouth after watching that movie. Yeah, it just kind of doesn't add to the effect of it at all.
No, so this movie came whopping around.
Came whopping around.
You heard me.
It's me. I'm Hellboy. I'm here whopping around in my big movie with the Croak-ed Man.
It had a $20 million budget, but it only made back $1.5 million. Did not make a lot of money. It was, I mean, I think partially because a good amount of the audience is in America.
Yes.
And also, there was no, like, trailers or marketing or anything for this
hardly
movie.
anything. We saw like the first trailer,
and that
was pretty much it.
One trailer looked bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It was not exciting.
It looked like a B horror movie, like that happened to have Hellboy in it. It's like it felt really strange. It felt like something that should not have been like widely released like that. Like everyone talking about this big Hellboy movie. Like this feels like a local like film festival kind of movie that people are talking about. Like it just didn't look like it was going to be that incredible. No. So I was going into this movie immediately thinking like, I don't know about this. I've got a couple of Hellboy books at home that I like to read and stuff. I loved the original ones. So like I enjoy Hellboy as a character pretty much. So like it was definitely tough for me because when they first announced this was even going to happen, the first things they mentioned was it's a direct adaptation of The Croak-ed Man. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Mike Mignola is going to be writing it. Okay, cool. We're off to a good start. Then that first trailer was released, and I was like,
I definitely didn't feel good about it.
Especially since after the David Harbour Hellboy came out, there was a lot of fuss on the internet about like, guys, they're really ruining it. They've done a bad job. So I was like, okay, let's take all of those considerations into consideration, and then let's like fix it, make a good one. We have to do good, right? And then, at least as far as the trailers went, I was like, oh, I don't know, guys. This one might not be the one for us.
Yeah.
No, but so we can tell you what we thought about it in just a moment. Derek, you got some info on this movie?
Yeah, so I mean, we basically already talked about it, but the Rotten Tomatoes score is at 41. The audience is actually at a 59, which was significantly higher than I expected. Letterboxd is sitting at a 2.4. IMDb is at a 4.5.
Yeah. So honestly, this movie was like you even mentioned beforehand, like it's almost too good to be reviewing for this podcast.
Nah.
Just as far as reviews go.
We've stopped really caring about that, though.
Which is true, yeah.
Point.
We don't really care too much. And also, I kind of just wanted an excuse to watch this and get to like discuss it. Because again,
and
like
dissect it.
I enjoy Hellboy, so like we can see where we go with this. Should we expect this one?
Yeah.
So like I mentioned before, I was definitely feeling like I'm not sure if this is going to be a good one. My expectations going in were honestly a little low. It like didn't get released in theaters. There were a lot of people online who were kind of picking it apart, but then there were also those people who were like big time Hellboy fans who were like praising Jack Casey on his performance in this role, and they really loved a lot of things about it. They're like, I don't understand the hate. This one's so good. So I was on the fence. I was like, I'm going to come in.
Pretty hit or miss.
I'm going to put my expectations on the floor, and that'll leave me to have a good time, right? Because I'm like, if it's really bad, then like I will have my expectations met, and if it's better than that, I'll walk out having a good time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you think?
I just thought I would be kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
I thought I was with you where I'm less of a Hellboy. I do enjoy Hellboy a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen the movies and I really enjoy it.
Of course.
But I just kind of felt like I would be disappointed.
Totally.
Which is crazy because expectations are so low, but whatever.
So my first expectation in here was something that I noticed immediately because, again, I've read the original story here. They added a character. Her name is Bobby Jo Song. She's an additional agent who is here with Hellboy from his organization that is not in the original story at all. Just a completely new character who I didn't think needed to be there at all.
No, we were talking about this in the trailer.
Exactly. So it was from the get-go, I literally wrote, the added agent here with Hellboy will be useless. I did not think she was going to be necessary or add anything to the story.
A strong attempt at being a adaptation,
right? Which you would hope for, right?
Yeah.
The director saying he loves the character.
A strong attempt.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good way to put it, though. I said some really fun direct from comic moments, because even within the trailer, I could say, okay, no, that's directly, I remember seeing that panel in the graphic novel. So I think there are going to be some fun one-to-one shots, which will be really fun, which you don't often see in things. There's a lot of artistic interpretations of things, but it's a visual medium, right? It's a comic book, so it's like you have to take it for what it is. So I was excited to see some of those.
Just because of the fan film nature of the trailer, I assumed that all the special effects were going to be super cheesy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just really, really cheesy.
I said it was going to be more horror than any Hellboy iteration we've seen thus far, because something I love about Guillermo del Toro's movies is they are horror movies for the most part, but there's also a lot of whimsy and magic to these worlds and stuff that is not gritty, dark horror that you see in a lot of other things. This one, on the other hand, looked like it was really leaning into the folk horror side of things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Really gritty, darkness to it. And so I was excited to see if that was going to be a new take for us here.
Yeah. The cinematography really reminiscent of a fan film. Again, what we saw in the trailer, but it was the most prominent thing since day one. I'm this cinematography is going to feel like it belongs at a film festival.
And there are...
But not a big film festival.
Yes. And there are some times when there have been a couple of fan films released where listen, they got some really good cinematography in this.
It can happen.
There are definitely fan films that have been made and are being made that are pretty good, right? They're of a decent caliber. But yeah, I don't know if we're coming in saying that as a good thing in this situation.
I don't think I mean it as a good thing.
Yeah. I said some good practical moments. There are some things I noticed that looked actually like they might pull off really well. For instance, the design of the Croak-ed Man, the title character of the thing, really good, actually. I really liked him. You saw a couple shots of him. He's on some of the posters. He's in the trailer for it. And I was this dude looks practical, and he looks pretty good.
Can we talk about the poster real quick, though?
Yeah, let's talk about the poster.
I don't know, man. It looks a little dumb. I don't know if you've noticed little Mr. Santa Claus Croak-ed Man in the back there.
Yeah.
Don't just look at the main red poster for Hellboy.
Yeah.
It looks kind of bad. He's just gazing off into the distance, Hellboy is.
Yes.
And then behind a tree is the Croak-ed Man. Just ooh.
Just peeking out from over his shoulder there. It's not an incredible design for sure.
I'm not saying I could have done a better job. What I'm saying is it's a bad poster.
Yes, no. But from the get-go, that first image we saw of the Croak-ed Man, I'm he is one-to-one exactly what he looks like in the comics. And I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah, for sure. No scares at all. Yeah. I was just expecting this movie would be so full of itself in that sense that it would try too hard that it wouldn't even be scary.
Yeah. That tracks. My final expectation was that there was going to be an obvious lack of budget throughout the movie. Not as a whole, but I felt there were definitely going to be you watch a movie and you're I'm kind of on board for this. Then they do something. There's some special effect. You're that's right. They definitely did not have that big boy budget for this movie, huh?
I can think of one in very particular.
Yes, I can think of a couple, honestly. Yeah. But so I was thinking there was definitely going to be things that remind you that is it is a movie that was made on a lesser budget than a lot of big blockbuster movies, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I was expecting.
And then finally, a messy plot. I just expected it to be just kind of a jumble. One of the things that I was kind of thinking was okay, if Mike Mignola is a graphic novel writer and now he's coming in and writing a screenplay, I'm excited about it,
mediums.
But it is a very different medium, and it probably will not translate.
And they flow very differently, right, as a comic book, because I the story flows really well in the graphic novel in its original form, right?
For sure.
So it's curious to see where that is going to go. And you also mentioned he wrote the initial screenplay, then it was kind of adapted a bit afterwards, right? There were other writers attached to this as well.
It seems it was, from what I can tell, and obviously we weren't in the writer's room, so we don't know, but Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden and Brian Taylor, the director, all worked together on the screenplay, but the majority of it was written by Mike Mignola.
Yeah.
And they just kind of came together and were okay, well, we can adapt this into a movie. We can do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So shall we dive into Hellboy, the Croak-ed Man?
Ow, my back.
Oh, you're back. No, he's crooked again. The scoliosis is back.
Oh, man. I'm
Oh,
crooked.
jeez. Oh, Derek, we got to get you
screwed up.
straightened out.
Oh, I'm crooked, man.
Hell, boy.
Hell, boy. I'm crooked.
All right, so we start out with some fun, like, 50s music that is, like, over the initial, like, opening, like, this company made it and this company, blah, blah, the title cards there. And I was like, this seems like a weird vibe to start out. It's, like, very, like, happy 50s bopping tunes.
Strange.
I was like, we're starting off on a bit of a weird note, but it is immediately cut away for some more accurate, like, horror music vibes underneath that as it actually gets into the movie proper, where we see Hellboy the Crooked Man in big red letters on the screen. It's like, okay, I kind of see you got that little like juxtaposition, I guess, you know, where you have like happy music and then cutting into actually being a horror movie. I'm like, okay.
As soon as that music ended, though, I was like, okay, it's gonna come back.
Yeah, which I kind of hoped for.
Oh, me too.
So we see Hellboy riding on a train with his partner Bobby Joe Song. So it's the two of them here. There's a third man in there who like isn't super important. He's just another agent who's kind of ragging on Hellboy for some reason. They're transporting some box with a very poisonous spider in it. It's just this big wooden crate in the middle of the car they're in this train. And they're like, oh yeah, it's this incredibly dangerous spider. It has like superpowers and dark forces all around it. Like just kind of this weird spider thing going on here.
I don't know why.
Off the bat,
why did it have to happen?
Off the bat, none of this is in the book. Literally, the book starts off with Hellboy alone, by the way, not with his Bobby Joe character. He's alone already in the town talking to people. So like once we get there, that's where the actual book starts.
Oh, goodness.
But to start us out, I guess they needed a reason to get him to this town, I suppose. So yeah, so they're transporting a big old spider. Guess what? Spider breaks out of the box. It's huge.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a
gigantic.
big old spider. Derek loved it. Derek, do you like the spider?
So spiders are my favorite animal.
Derek
and
loves
I'm not scared of them
spiders.
at all. And I don't scream at night when I think there's a spider on my face, ever.
Oh, Derek, no,
I'm kidding.
please.
I didn't like it, though. It was gross.
However,
it did look super fake.
I was going to say, how did the spider look?
It was like, it looked like someone went into like, you know how there's like a 3D animation software on every new Windows computer?
Yes.
It looks like someone went in there and just like built a spider.
Yeah, not even on something cool like Blender. It's like Microsoft's 3D
It was
animation.
Microsoft 3D animation.
Yeah, exactly. So this big spider breaks out of this box. It does immediately chomp onto the head of that one useless agent man I mentioned
That
a
was
second
crazy.
ago.
I did
And
not see that
his
coming.
head just explodes. We're like, all of us kind of looked at each other like, whoa, okay, we were not expecting that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So we do get a fun scene where Hellboy kind of just goes toe-to-toe with this giant spider. He keeps launching it into the walls, and it's like teetering the train car back and forth on the tracks. Like, there was a moment there where I was like, I can kind of see why they added this, just to like give Hellboy fun things to do, see him fight things, because that's what you want to see your main like hero character do, right?
It also felt like the opening scene of like most slasher movies, where it has like that opening kill that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Of course.
That's kind of what it felt like to me.
Totally, yeah. But then as he's knocking it into the walls of the car then falls off the tracks and plummets down a hill, and then they do more battling into the woods. You know, it's just Hellboy fighting a big spider for a second.
Here's the thing, though. That spider looked bad in the dark.
Way worse.
As soon as you bring that into the
way
light,
worse in the daylight.
Oh my goodness! It did not move naturally.
No.
I felt like it was skipping frames.
It kinda-
like sometimes it would be moving in the air and like disappear and then reappear.
No, exactly. There are points where like it flies from like a tree and tries to jump onto Hellboy, and it looks like it moves in like slow motion.
Yeah.
Like the speed
It
is
was
not
like
right.
stuttering.
Yes.
Yeah, it was wrong.
It's not great. So anyway, they duke it out for a minute, and then eventually, after I guess losing the fight, the spider shrinks down in size and then escapes through some ventilation shafts just out here in the middle of the woods. Because it becomes an apparent thing throughout this that there are like these mine shafts that are underneath these woods that were kind of a thing in the book, but not really. They're definitely more of a thing in this movie, and it didn't feel very useful. But so that's where the spider goes. And, you know, we'll see if the spider comes back.
I mean,
I don't know.
It was a cool like concept for a town.
Yeah.
The end of
That's
the
the period.
Literally the end of it.
So yeah, the spider disappears, right? So now, without their cargo, they're in a bit of trouble. Without cargo, without a train, they just start to walk into the woods to try to find some help. They do come across, I want to say a town, but it's more like a house.
Dude, it did not feel like a town to
There's
me at
one
all.
house with like 15 people in it.
Yeah, and like someone just like shows up to the door. And you're
Yeah.
just like, okay, were you just walking in the middle of a forest?
Exactly, yeah. And so they walk inside the house. Inside the house, there's just a child laying on the middle of the floor. Just catatonic, just chilling there like he's
And
a rug.
everybody's like, okay, he's just dead.
Everyone's kind of like, no one seems concerned about this child. Everyone's just kind of like, yeah, that's Tommy the floor boy.
He got here when he came like that. You know,
When-
he came out of his
when
mom,
you-
he laid on the floor,
when
and
you
that's
walk,
how he's been.
When you walk in, make sure to wipe your feet on Tommy the floor.
Oh, that's sad.
That's so
It's a child.
That's a child, which is kind of funny because it didn't feel necessary to make that a child. In the book, it is an adult woman.
Oh.
It doesn't really change a lot about what happens with that character, but it was weird to make it a kid for no reason. Just more sympathy, I guess, because you feel bad for the child.
I mean,
even though none of the adults seem to give a shit. They're just like, oh, he's been bewitched.
well, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, man. This whole scene felt pointless.
Yeah, which is kind of sad.
The whole next 10 minutes felt pointless.
This actual sequence is a pretty good setup for the rest of the story, in the book at least, but in the movie, it just kind of like clipped by really fast. None of the characters seemed important.
How is this important in the book? Like, I'm genuinely curious.
It's really just like they make it a bigger thing. So basically, I'll tell you what happens right here. So what happens in the movie, they come in, they see this kid on the floor, they're like, oh yeah, he's been bewitched. He was messing with the local witch, Cora Fisher. And then some old town local comes in, Tom Farrell, and he says he's coming to town because he was passing by or something like that. Then he sees the kid on the floor, he knows exactly what the problem is with him, and that's how the rest of the story progresses, right? But it's just the story flows and is told better within the book because they come there, all of the townsfolk are really concerned about this girl who was found on the floor. They don't know what's wrong with her. They can't put it together, right? All they can assume is that the local witch in town is the one who's responsible for this, right? This town's got a big old witch problem, that's for sure. Son of a witch. Which witch is which?
Which is
We're not doing that again. That was like 90 episodes ago. But so then when Tom Farrell walks in the door, it's a big deal. They're like, this guy has been gone for the last 20 years. We all thought you were dead. But the way he walks in the movie makes it seem like he was also another dude who's been here the whole time.
Yeah, it did not. It did not feel.
They're like, oh, hey Tom, welcome in here. Yeah, we're looking at Floor Tom again, or whatever.
Flom,
whatever the kid on the floor's name is. I already forgot.
Tom.
I forgot it. It's hard for me to explain why it is done better in the book. It's just the way it paces is a bit better because in the movie it just paces really, really fast.
I mean, this jumps over to my expectation, right? It is such a different medium. When you're reading a graphic novel, you're analyzing each panel, right? You don't have that luxury in film because you want film to move faster.
Exactly. Like the pacing is incredibly different between a comic book and a movie.
I'm wondering if this is why they added the entire character of Joe.
Yes.
Because
to kind of help slow things down, I guess.
Slow it down.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, it did.
Yes,
boy,
absolutely.
did she slow things down. But, like, not in a good way. No. I don't know.
So now we know there's a local witch in town. Her name is Cora Fisher. Tom Farrell, he knows of her. He's like, oh, she was my friend when we were young. I know her very well. Like, there's no way she's a witch because he's been gone for the last 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's coming back. He thought he didn't know things had changed like this. He's like, oh, I know Cora. I know where she lives. If she's the witch in town, if you believe that's what's happening, I'm going to go check on her, see what's going on, right? So now he's going to go and see this Cora Fisher to get to the bottom of this bewitching. Bobby Joe, the agent here with Hellboy, Joe Bobby, she wants to go along with him. She is very intrigued about this. Hellboy, let's talk about Hellboy's character in this one.
Who?
He's kind of a dick.
Who?
Hellboy, you know?
I'm sorry. All he's done so far is stand there and smoke cigarettes and say a quip every 3 seconds.
I really need to go through this movie again and make a tracker to how many cigarettes this man lights.
It's not that he's smoking entire cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's just like every time it cuts to him, I swear to God, he's either pulling his gun out of his pants or he's lighting a cigarette.
Seriously.
It's just two quirks.
Like, I understand when you think about Hellboy, it is very easy to imagine him in the iconic pose of like him with a cigar or cigarette in his mouth, right? But there's got to be more to the character than that.
Were they scared to use cigars? Because
Maybe.
that would have been more badass. Just had him hold an entire ass cigar the whole movie. Because then he just could have the
just
one.
have one cigar instead of lighting
how
like
they did it in
50 cigarettes
the
throughout
Del Toro movies. Because because
he had like big old stogies in
that's
that
what
one,
I'm saying.
which is
like,
more accurate.
But I felt like in those ones it was like a progression. You're like, okay, the beginning of the movie it's a big cigar, and then
exactly.
Smaller. This one it's like, here, let me pull out this wrapped doobie I made in
doobie.
the
they
car.
weren't even actual cigarettes. They were like his own rolled things,
which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, there are moments where like he learns from certain characters in the books how to roll them and stuff like that.
Oh. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's like a testament to how much this director and writer knew.
But
however,
still too
translating to film, if we weren't paying that much attention to his fucking cigarettes, then we wouldn't have noticed. It was annoying. It genuinely started to bother me towards the end of the movie.
You know how
every time he would light it, he's in the sewers, spoilers, and I'm like, why are you lighting a cigarette right now?
You know how often we talk about like the nun effect, where it's like the camera's one place, it pans away, pans back, and the nun is there, right? That's basically what happened with his cigarettes.
Yeah.
You show Hellboy, he might already be lighting a cigarette. You turn the camera away, you point back, he has another cigarette.
My guy was getting lung cancer every 5 seconds, and the people around him were getting lung cancer too. Also, he doesn't go to the sewers in this movie. I don't know why I said that.
No.
But he goes to go to a house in the middle of nowhere, and he's still lighting a cigarette.
It's crazy. Honestly, Jack Casey opens his mouth, and I expected him to be like, "Hello, it's me, Hellboy." I'm the one.
Okay, I'm gonna do my impression of Jack Casey. Ready?
Yeah. Okay.
This is my impression of Jack Casey, and now I'm gonna do my impression of Hellboy. Hey, it's me, Hellboy.
But I personally, are you ready? Are you in a place for some constructive criticism?
Yeah.
Some feedback, as your
please.
friend. I didn't notice too much difference between those two.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. So here's Hellboy.
Hey,
I'm going to light up a cigarette.
Okay, yeah. And now Jack Casey.
Hey, it's me, Jack Casey.
Okay, Derek, you're a true artist here. There's a little bit of nuance between those two, more than Jack Casey himself did, because it's just him talking in a monotone way. And there is something about, I personally felt like it was an interesting story to try to adapt, because something I feel about The Crooked Man as a story, I do enjoy it as a Hellboy story. I think it is really good as far as the story goes. It is kind of interesting how, it is a Hellboy story, but not a lot of it pertains to him.
No.
The story starts with him getting to this house, walking in and seeing this girl lying on the floor who's been bewitched, all of that kind of stuff. And then he just decides to help these people out. Because Hellboy's, he is a demon. That is the thing about his character. He is from hell. He is Hellboy, right? But he's a benevolent demon who does not want to give in to his basically birthright to be this ender destroyer of the world. That's kind of his whole character, right? He's raised by good people, yada, yada, yada. In this one, he just decides to help these people because he's a good person. This story could completely exist without Hellboy in it. And so that makes it hard to adapt him into it. What do you give that character then if his name is plastered on the front of the thing, right?
Something I really quite despised.
Yeah, tell the story and I'm going to light up a cigarette about it.
Oh my God! Did you light up two? He put four fingers to his mouth.
I'm streamlining the process. Hellboy could learn a thing or two.
I gotta get cancer immediately. No, okay. One thing that really kind of bugged me about the way Hellboy was written for this movie.
It's because he was a dick the whole time.
Yes, he was a dick the whole time, but he brought up the fact that he was a demon every chance he could.
Yes,
especially
really
towards the
about
beginning
that.
of the movie, he's like, "Well, I'm a demon. I'm not gonna." Jack Casey?
No. There's a lot of callbacks to the fact that he is in fact a demon. It's we're aware.
We know.
You have horns on your head. You're a red
He's
person.
Red Bull.
It's kind of hard to miss, we understand that. He had a lot of really weird, awkward one-liners that, again, some of them can work. There were a few lines he said that actually made me laugh out loud. I'm like, okay, that made me laugh. That is something Hellboy would likely say in this situation.
Yeah, but
it just doesn't work. And again, that might just be Jack Casey's delivery.
All of them.
Yeah, a lot of memorable. So
See?
That was a big something. Dog? There were no dogs.
No.
Snake? I can't remember. I have
But,
no idea.
He made one about the big spider. It's
Yeah.
no, that's a big ass bird.
Yeah, that's
That
a
one
big ass
was good.
bird. Yeah, that one kind of made me laugh. But again, a realistic thing that he would do. But Hellboy is a nice person. He's quite jaded. He's kind of one of those he is a monster that is shunned away from society. He has to live a secret life because of that, right? Because society would never accept him, of course, all that kind of stuff. So he's a bit jaded to people. He doesn't take to them very well, but he is still a good person.
Yeah.
It almost felt like the addition of Bobby Joe as a character was just for him to rag on the whole time.
That's what it felt like.
He's just kind of giving her shit the whole time.
It really felt like at some iteration of this story, she was going to be a love interest.
Yes.
They were going to have some weird
Which I
romance.
didn't want. I did not want that.
No. And I mean, we'll say now it doesn't happen
It
until
doesn't go
maybe
that way.
the last 30 seconds of the movie.
Maybe, yeah.
But other than that, I can't justify her being there. I'm trying.
No.
But I can't.
I know, and her, with the addition of her, the story starts to go a very different direction that I did not necessarily feel was incredibly necessary. Nothing about her addition added to this movie at all. Yeah. So, but anyway, to get back into the movie, so Bobby Joe wants to go along with Tom Farrell to go to see this Cora Fisher character, this witch, right? Because she, again, this is another moment where Hellboy's just kind of giving her shit about you're a bookworm, you're our man behind the computer, you don't go do the in the field stuff, that's my job. She's like, no, I'm better at learning in person, I want to get a hands-on, I don't want to just learn from my dusty books and blah, blah, blah. I want to get out there and see the real world. And so the three of them are on their way to go see Cora Fisher. However, not without a brief interruption, it feels like a goddamn commercial break here.
Yeah,
and this is kind of funny because this actually did happen in the comic. The story is going along. It's actually a bit further into the story in the comic book, but it's really funny. They talk about these things called witch balls. It basically looks like this little black hairball from a cat. Basically, it's a bit smaller than the size of a baseball, really. And that is what was on the child that was on the floor that made them paralyzed and said the child was bewitched. It's a witch ball is what they're talking about. In the comic book, there is an entire page with tons of dialogue dictating exactly how a witch would make a witch ball. And then they do that in this one too.
But it's it's freaking Carol Channing, getting up there, right up into the camera.
Yeah.
She's the most classic looking witch in the entire
movie. Her name is
movie.
Granny Oakham. It's funny. The camera's all blurred on her and her warty little face.
Isn't she from Pokemon?
I think
Granny
so.
Oakum.
Granny Oakum is my favorite Pokemon character.
When you Google witch balls,
Yeah.
they're not even close to what. I mean, obviously everyone has their own lore. And
Yeah.
Mignola made his own lore, but
Of course,
when I
yeah.
looked it up, it's like it's a sphere of glass that witches hang up to ward off. No, that people hung up to ward off witches.
Okay, so yeah, this is quite the opposite. This is something that witches are
quite
using.
opposite. Yeah,
But yeah, so we get basically a commercial break when they decide they're going to go on their big quest by Granny Oakum telling us exactly how to make witch balls. It feels pretty useless. It felt kind of useless in the comic
it
too.
was a Family Guy cutaway.
Yes,
it literally
exactly.
goes from normal continuous plot line to
Yes.
welcome here. I'm going to teach you how to make a witch ball.
It's like Peter Griffin literally looks down the barrel of the camera. It's like, hey, Lois, remember that time we learned how to make witch balls?
Brian, come make a witch ball.
Giggity. Just giggity? Yeah, that's it. That's all he needs. But so it cuts...
Peter.
Hey, Peter.
This is
we're not
awful.
doing... We're not...
Everything we just did was so cringy. Remember how we were talking about
Let's cut the last like 25 seconds of this podcast.
You know I'm not going to.
The world cannot know I have that many Family Guy impressions inside of my
Do
body
one more,
right
I
now.
dare you.
I don't have any more that I can do.
Cool whip.
Cool whip. There you
I'm
go.
gonna sue you again.
That's it. So the movie just takes a second to tell us how to make witch balls and then gets right back into where it left off, which is, it felt like a weird commercial
It was
break
terrible.
in the middle of the movie. So the gang here, we got Tom, we got Bobby Joe, and we got Hellboy here. The three of them reach Cora's house, but she's not answering. They're calling out to her, whatever. So they let themselves in. Inside the house, they find some questionable witchy things. You know, there's like vials of weird things. You know, there's a bug in a jar. There's like birds hanging from the ceiling. Most importantly, in her bed, they find the skin of a woman.
Yeah,
It's
classic.
Cora's entire flesh perfectly intact. It's just like if someone cleanly removed the skin from the body and it's just chilling there. No blood, no nothing.
Nope.
It's just like limply chilling on the bed. They're like, well, okay. And so Tom is pretty quickly like, well, I guess that means she's out. We'll have to wait till she gets back. Tom weirdly knows a lot about what's going on here. He's kind of unfazed by everything.
It didn't really make any sense to me because I thought he had been away, and then he's like, knows everything.
It's very strange. But so they kind of have to pass time while they wait for Cora to get back, I guess, because she's not in her skin, so she's somewhere, I suppose. So we get a flashback of Tom's past here. This is another thing directly from the comic book here. When he was about 15, he went out into the woods and he met this girl named, this witch specifically named Effie Kolb, and she got into his head, turned him into witchcraft, or turned him on to the idea of witchcraft. He decided, this pretty girl who's looking at me and kissing me and stuff, told me to do witchery, so I'm going to do it myself. So what he did is, in order to like become a witch himself, he went out, found like this roadkill, this dead cat. He boiled it till it was nothing but bones, and then Effie told him, you need to take the bones to the river, wash them in the river, and then when the devil shows up while you are washing a specific bone, that's going to be your lucky bone. It's an interesting. That's straight out the graphic novel.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about this witchy stuff, but that seems kind of interesting.
Seems kind of cool.
So while he's washing the bones of this cat in the river, the devil appeared to him, but it's the Croak-ed Man. So it's this man who's got this trench coat on, this little like chin strap beard. He's looking old and decrepit. He's got one eye that's like completely blind looking. His neck is completely cocked to the side, and you can actually, this is really cool. You can see the indent of the noose that hung him like still in his neck.
Cool.
It's actually, there's a really cool design. Again, practical effects on this guy.
I did appreciate that was practical.
He looked really, really good. I really loved him. Again, put them side by side. The one from the movie and the one from the comic, identical. They did a really good job bringing that character into live action. I really enjoyed that.
Here's the problem, though. The actor that played him, he looks like Michael Cera and Mark Zuckerberg. Like, had a baby.
He's like Markle Ceraberg.
Markle Ceraberg. My favorite.
He's going to tell you about Facebook and also make you fight 7 evil exes at the same time. It is kind of funny, though, because he actually gives a pretty good performance, this Croak-ed Man. He's a spooky character. The design of him looks really good. He is not an imposing man when you look at like his IMDb picture.
He's kind of a cute little boy.
He's just kind of a cute man. He looks like if he was auditioning for like SpongeBob the Musical, you would cast him as SpongeBob.
Or Squidward.
Or Squidward, maybe. I would cast him as that as well. But so yeah, we get a bit of a background on the Croak-ed Man too. He was a dude who like did nothing but like gamble on people and their lives. He was like a part of the Civil War for a second. People eventually caught wind of him and his antics and stealing money from people and such, and so he got hung. And now he comes back, and so instead of getting money, he gets people's souls in the form of currency and like copper coins, which would be cool if they were actual like copper coins from different time periods. They're just pennies.
Yeah.
They're just regular ass pennies. It's kind of weird.
Of course.
But so when he was a kid, he sees the devil, this crooked man in front of him. And so seeing this, he swears off all witchcraft and tries to run from it all away. But he could never run from that one lucky bone that he got from this cat. He literally takes it and like tries to throw it away, and it comes back to him over and over again. So it's like, that is what makes him a witch. He sold his soul to this devil, I suppose, by making this pact with him. So now this bone is his lucky thing. I guess it's kind of like his arcane focus, I guess, for like casting spells and stuff like that. But he's like, I never use it. I don't want this witchcraft. It's evil. Please keep me away from it. So he's just spent his entire life running away from this. So it was that point when he was like a 15-year-old, he left. He didn't tell mom, didn't tell dad, didn't tell anybody. He just booked it, went and joined the army for a second. Like, there's really not a lot to mention about that.
Except they had a full-ass scene of him in the army.
Yeah.
With, like, explosions and stuff,
which
that
probably
was
cost
probably
a bit
like
of money.
$1 million right there.
Exactly, for like literally a 3-second shot.
Oh yeah,
of
and
him
like
in the army.
A ton of extras too.
Yeah,
that were all
exactly.
there chilling.
But yeah, he basically just talks about how like he was in the army fighting in the war, and like he felt like he only survived because of this lucky bone that he got, right? So it makes him lucky, but also a witch, right? So now the flashback's over. Back in Cora's room, a raccoon, cute little raccoon, comes on up through the window, and oh, what's that? It's coming down onto the bed. Oh, it's going up to the mouth of the flesh suit of Cora. It crawls itself down into the skin, and then we get a very long and nasty sequence of that flesh suit becoming a person again.
It was insane.
It's contorting. It's making these awful sounds as the flesh becomes whole and like unfurls
so much
itself.
Celery was crackled during that.
So
moment.
many chompy celery noises. The Foley artist had a heyday with this one.
But like honestly, that entire sequence was one of the best moments of the movie.
It was actually
really well done.
good, and that flesh suit was definitely practical. Like I'm sure there were a lot of CGI elements added to it, but like there were definitely shots where you could tell it was just like a flesh
suit.
suit.
CGI to me though.
No,
which I guess is a good thing.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like there were some tweaks that could have been made to do things that you just can't get practically, but like
probably
mostly practical on this flesh suit as she like screams and like writhes as she becomes a person again. Like it was really well done.
It was
so
creepy.
that's definitely one of my expectations checked off. Where like that scene straight out of the comic, and I really enjoyed it. Almost worse in live action, actually, with the sound effects, with it all having to watch it in action.
Yeah.
Horrifying. Yeah. But so Cora's back now, and she's afraid someone is after her. Someone is actually, because right outside, someone has arrived. It's Effie Kolb, the witch from Tom's flashback, right? She's on horseback. She comes in, and she's just Derek, how would you describe her character? Like the one thing she can do.
Well, she can be horny.
Yep. I think that's it. You've described her character at this point. That's basically it. Like the most you have to get is like Tom Farrell was drawn to witchcraft because this woman was kind of, luring him in.
She's like
sexually.
A siren.
Yeah. But in a way, absolutely.
But there was something about her performance.
Seducing him.
Something about her performance that really bothered me. She did this thing where she would like say a sentence and she would move her head forward.
She was a sensual character, and so every line she did was come with like some body roll in any direction. Like she could not stay still to deliver a line.
But not distracting in the way of like, oh, she's so sexy.
No.
It was more... I was honestly appalled by this woman because of like her body movement.
Derek really didn't like her. But I mean, she does a good job of being like a villain that you don't like, right? Like you instantly do not like this woman. She threatens that the Crooked Man has some unfinished business with Tom, right? And she basically just kind of sits there, taunts them for a minute, and then flies away. And this is the first of so many moments where they have characters rise off the ground and fly for some reason.
I'm pretty sure they spent $500,000 on a freaking flight rig.
Yes.
And they're like, okay, how many people can we make fly in this movie?
It's so funny how like Derek pointed that out initially. I was like, oh yeah, but then it just kept happening.
Yeah.
There's so many moments where anytime it happened, we just shouted, gotta use the rig.
Gotta use the flight rig.
Gotta get the flight rig. Gotta get our money's worth out of that thing. Because like there are so many moments where unnecessarily people were flying into the air, which like is a fun effect. It's just funny when you think about it that way.
So consistent.
Yes, it's really funny. But so Effie flies away into the air. And she's like, oh, I was also supposed to bring you this gift. And she gestures to the horse and then flies away. So then Tom goes up to the horse and takes the little like mouth bit, like its harness off of its face. And when he takes that off, it transforms into Tom's missing father, who he thought was just dead, had drunk himself to death, right? Yeah. And so you find out after he had left, Effie found his father, turned him into this horse, and apparently has just been riding him around for years and years.
Yeah, my dad's just been talking weird lately. I think he's a little hoarse.
Son, bring me some apples. I need an apple. I need son, please. Hey.
That's it. That's actually the whole bit.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us at this weekly the council meeting. All in favor of this. All in favor, say yay. Yeah. Okay. Now, all opposed. Well, I'm sure there's nay. That was a stupid, lengthy bit.
I didn't
just
know
to
where
get him
you
to
were
say
going
nay.
with it, but I liked it. It was good.
You think there's a lot of anytime someone comes up to him, they're like, he's like, get off my back.
That's pretty good.
And it just high horse would have come in.
Oh, whoa. I hear you making horse puns.
Yeah, what do you got to say about horse? Are you okay? That's pretty good. Are you a person transformed into a horse?
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know?
No, not at all.
Oh, no, I'm a talking horse.
That should have been my first clue.
Obviously.
That talking horses are not a real thing.
And horses don't like butt plugs, but humans do. So
you as a human are big into butt plugs.
Oh, incredibly. I mean, I'm a horse, and
Oh my gosh.
or am I a human?
This is terrible.
What makes a horse and what makes a man?
Am I a horse or am I a man?
Am I a Muppet? No.
Or am I a
could
horse?
be, but I'm not.
So one thing I'll point out though that like I was kind of sad. On one hand, I'm happy this didn't happen because in the books, when Effie Kolb rides out on this horse looks so sad. This horse has got its ribs showing. It is like a gross color.
Yeah.
It's like mangy.
We were worried something bad was going to happen.
It looks really bad. So I was like, I'm glad that the horse in the movie looked very healthy. There was nothing wrong with this horse, but it was kind of sad to think like I did not feel bad for the dad in this movie because it didn't look like he was worn ragged. But also, I didn't want that to happen to a horse either, you know? It's not like Napoleon where they're blowing horses up with cannonballs. If you haven't seen Napoleon, I'm sorry, but that happens.
It does. It's very tragic. That movie did not come out this year. That was last year.
Oh, okay, cool.
Whoops.
So we can talk about it now. The embargo is up on Napoleon.
I mean, it has been for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure it definitely has.
When that man tried to have sex for the first time, the embargo was up for him.
Oh, my... Yeah. Okay, back to Hellboy, the Croak-ed Man. So the horse transforms into Tom's missing father. He dies like right in his arms. So he's like, now it is my mission. He's like, we're going to go see Reverend Watts up in the church on the hill to bury my father on church ground, on consecrated ground. And we're going to get Reverend Watts to help us fight against the Croak-ed Man. This man's got a destiny. And again, right here, it's like, Tom Farrell is the main character of this story. This is all his story. Hellboy's just like, I guess I'll help out because I'm Hellboy.
Joe's there too.
Oh, that's right. Bobby Joe is there too.
Bobby Joe.
Who, again, has done really nothing except tell Hellboy, hey, we shouldn't do this. Hey, don't do that. She just kind of is there the whole time.
I forgot about her.
Yeah, we keep forgetting about her. Honestly, there's a point in the movie where it feels like they forget about her too.
Oh, yeah, right now.
Exactly. So they decide they're going to go see Reverend Watts up in the church, right? As they journey through the woods the following morning.
What's he up to?
What'd you say?
Sorry, I was like yawning, and then I had to jump in to make a joke.
No,
quick. What's he up to?
What's he up to? Okay, I get it. See, let's go see what Reverend Watts is up to. What's he up to? I get you. Now I'm with it.
It's funny.
They're journeying through the woods the following morning. Cora becomes possessed again. So she immediately walks away from their group looking like a woman possessed, and she starts flying into the air again using that flight rig. Gotta use that rig.
Gotta use that flight rig.
She flies into the air, stays there, and then a snake crawls from nowhere into her mouth and then chomps on her neck like a big old chomp.
Okay, yeah, this snake-ass snake was like snake-ass snake because it was going through her ass and into her mouth and, really gross. I mean, it didn't show it.
It was pretty nasty, but it was like an Ouroboros of like the snake just continuing upon itself, climbing through her.
More like an oral boros.
Oh, no, you didn't. That's terrible.
I regret it.
I hate it because it was good, but it was gross. like you get one clap for that one because
I will savor that one.
It was pretty good.
Anyway, it was like the worst colon cleanse you could possibly have.
Oh God, you're
like
so right.
Going through your body. It's like you accidentally ingest some chemical, and you're like, how do you get it out of you? You got to snake that drain. I'm like, oh, okay, what does that mean?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a full-ass
This
snake.
is what they mean, right? And this is another one where like the effects on the snake were not incredible. It didn't look that good.
There was nothing actually scary about this.
No,
now, what we're describing to you is horrifying.
Probably
right?
scarier than how it actually was.
It was not at all. It was barely effective. But then the snake starts biting Hellboy's neck over and over.
Yeah, because Hellboy comes in
spot.
to save the day. He's like, oh, I'm going to fight this snake now as you're flying in the air still. Then, yeah, it keeps biting him in the same one spot on his shoulder over and over again. But so he eventually ends up besting the snake. He gets it in his hand and just squishes its head, pops it clean.
This CGI looked bad, though.
That was another moment that looked pretty rough.
The snake's head was clipping underneath
Through his
thumb
hand, yeah.
and hand. It didn't look good at all.
Speaking of not looking that good, how did you feel about the body of Mr. Hellboy here? His lovely, sensual,
my
his
God. How have
abs.
we
Tell
not-
me about his abs, Derek.
How have we not talked about this yet?
It is so obvious that they did not just put body paint on Jack
No,
Casey's body,
dude.
which is kind of funny because, like, based on pictures
a
of the
ripped
man,
boy.
he looks like he's a strong man. I didn't
Yeah.
think you would have to add a prosthetic chest to the man, and maybe this
There's-
is just to save time to not paint him. But
Maybe, I don't know. But there were multiple shots throughout the movie. It wasn't just like once or twice. And
No.
all of us saw it where he would be like walking or like hunching or something, and you would see the folds of the skin suit.
of the prosthetic tummy
yeah,
that he was given,
It would be like folding over on itself. So it looked like you could like go up and grab it and play with it.
Yeah, and so that definitely didn't help with the whole, like, kind of feels like a budget movie kind of thing that was going on with it. So, like, he looks pretty rough. But so after being bit by the snake several times, Hellboy passes out from all of this, like, poison, I guess, that's in his veins. He's in now. This is a part that is an incredibly big departure from the story. There was no snake. None of that stuff happened in the book. Now he's in this weird dream space that kind of looks like, honestly, some places that you can see in, like, the video game Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of looked like that
Looks
space
like
there.
The nocturnal the city.
Something like that. If you've played Elden Ring, you've gone
Noctis.
under the world, you know what it looks like. Something like that. So down there, he sees Cora. Cora's here too. She's looking out into this big abyss, and then flying again, another person flying in midair. He
of
also
course.
sees his mother. Now, this is an interesting thing. Hellboy did not have anything to do with his mom in the original story here, and I feel like that goes along with what I said, where I'm like, Hellboy doesn't really have a lot of motive in this movie.
They were trying to connect it.
So I feel like that's their way of trying to connect it, trying to make Hellboy give a shit about the events of this movie. So he sees his mother there. Cora's talking about how, like, in life she was a sinner. Hellboy never knew her. He never met the woman. And then a really weird thing happens. A giant crow, a big ass crow, appears in front of his mother.
That's a big ass bird.
Yeah, that's when he says that. That was pretty good Jack Casey Hellboy.
Thank you.
So it's, I suppose, an embodiment of the devil in this big crow, and then he watches as this big beast kills his mother in his big fiery passion to create him, Hellboy. So basically, it seems like the devil, in order for this woman to pay for her sins, kills her to then birth Hellboy. Are we together on this?
It apparently is true. Apparently, because that is like part of
That's the thing.
lore.
Mike Mignola did write this, so technically
Yeah.
anything that happens in this is canon.
Well, and apparently that does happen in some of the other comics too.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know.
I'm actually, like, I've read some Hellboy comics. I'm not incredibly familiar with his mom. He's a character that, like, was just birthed someplace. He's a demon, and then he's adopted by some scientists and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of interesting to add his mother into the storyline. But again, I think it's just to give him purpose, and not just be like, I guess I'll just help out because I'm here and I'm Hellboy and that's what I do, you know. So he wakes up from this dream sequence, and now Cora's gone. I guess this is another weird instance here. Tom accidentally uses the power of his lucky bone to wish Cora away, I guess. He sees her under a bunch of, like, foliage in the woods, goes to, like, remove it all. You see his bone glow, and then she's gone. And so I don't really know what he did with her. It's not even obvious whether or not she's dead or not. This is one thing that did make me sad. There's an entire scene from the book that is missing here, where they're traveling through the woods here. They're going through this one area where there's these underground mines that apparently there was, like, a cave in, and there were these spooky witches that came down into the mines of this cave in and just ate all of the people that had died or were dying down there, and they still lived down there. So, like, Cora was afraid to go through this area because she was like, no, I can't go through there. The witches are going to get me. And they're like, no, trust us, you'll be fine. So they walk over this area that has these underground mine shafts in them that have been caved in. The witches call out to her and I guess cast some kind of spell. She starts to, like, gorge and bloat, and then she explodes into a bunch of, like, green glowing, like, centipede frog mutant creatures just all over the place. And so she dies in, like, a pretty gruesome fashion in
That's
that
insane.
one. And
How
so
would they? I mean, they had the capability to do something.
Right,
like
right. Exactly. So, like, it's weird that they didn't do that, but, like, it wasn't obvious to us in this iteration that she was even dead at all, or that it was Tom's fault at all. Because in
or
the
that
book,
she was even useful.
no, exactly.
at all.
Because in the book, it's definitely Tom feels really bad. He's like, I think I used my bone to, like, wish that for her. Like, I think I did something really, really bad, and he feels a lot of guilt because of it. In this one, he just
that's
kind of, like,
pretty good.
just wishes, and she just disappears, and I guess she's dead now. Okay, sure. And we know she's dead because now the remaining people, they make it to the church. Inside, they find Reverend Watts, and they tell him, and he tells them actually that Cora's ghost told him they'd be coming. Because they walk up and Reverend Watts is like, oh, you must be Tom Farrell. He's like, well, how did you know? He's like, well, this girl told me a couple of minutes ago. Reverend Watts is blind, so he can't see people. And they're like, there's no girl here. And instantly he's like, well, then it must have been a ghost. Must be a ghost that told me that.
He just cooled it.
So it's like, okay, so Cora is dead and was kind of useless in this one.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Yeah. So now they're at the church. They met up with Reverend Watts. Outside the church, witches begin to gather around the church, but they can't get in because the church is on consecrated ground, right?
Of course.
So there's this big circle around the church they cannot get in through, right? And so they're all talking about, like, what do we need to do? And they're like, we need to go find the Crooked Man's house and fight him. And the Reverend is like, well, you best stay here for the night. You're losing daylight, and the Crooked Man has most power at night, right? Which, I mean, makes sense for any kind of demonic character, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, we can get going. There's still plenty of daylight left. And then suddenly the sun just sinks into the horizon. And they're like, but that can't be.
But it's the middle of the day.
I know Bobby Joe is having a real hard time processing what is happening. It's
Yeah.
like, that's not, the earth doesn't rotate that fast. How can this happen? And then the Reverend is like, you're in the hurricane now. Like, we're on the devil's time is basically what he says, which is, again, it is another line straight out of the comic. There have been a couple of those, actually, were just like straight ripped from the page lines, which I did enjoy.
I like those.
But so now they're stuck in the church, and the Crooked Man and a bunch of witches have now showed up around the church to try to get these people out of it. And along with the Crooked Man, Effie Kolb is also here, shows up to taunt Tom, coaxing him to come out outside. And here's the Crooked Man here. He really wants that lucky bone from Tom. It's not apparent in this one, but like I like in the book, they really go into talking about how, like, it's one bone. Why does he give a shit about this bone?
Yeah, exactly.
It talks about how, like, he is an incredibly greedy man who cannot stand to be missing even 1 cent of a soul. And that's basically what he has there in this lucky bone. He's like, that belongs to me. I cannot leave. I cannot live my life knowing that, like, that which belongs to me is in your hands. They don't do a very good job of describing that in this movie, but, like, it's kind of a cool part about the Crooked Man's character.
Yeah.
But so Tom almost hands the bone over to the Crooked Man, and then Hellboy comes in and just, like, swats his hand down. Is like, no, we're not going to do that.
No.
Please don't do this. So he stops him before it's too late. So then the Crooked Man, he's a gambler, he's a businessman here. He's like, all right, so we'll turn my sights over to Hellboy. So like, hey, Hellboy, it's me, the Crooked Man. I'm a really scary dude who looks like Michael Cera sometimes. Why don't you go and kill Tom Farrell for me? In exchange, I'll help you get the soul of your mother back. So like, he does have ways to try to like try to convince the people to get him what he wants, but none of them are really working. Hellboy disagrees. He shoots right at the Crooked Man, missing, and then the Crooked Man, with some like telekinesis powers, lifts up some like fence spikes, these like metal spikes, and shoots them straight into Hellboy a couple of times. He's got like 3 or 4 of them inside of him. And again, that's another thing happened straight out of the comic book. Honestly, most of the scene that happens at this church is like 1-to-1 things that happen in the book, and so I really enjoy
that.
I really like this sequence. So after Hellboy takes a bunch of spikes to the chest and back, they retreat back into the church. And from the outside, the Crooked Man is still taunting them, still trying to strike these deals. He does this really messed up thing where Reverend Watts, he's like, wouldn't you like to have some of your youth back? Because he's like this older man. He's like, how about 10 years? And his beard gets a little bit shorter. And he's like, okay, how about 20 years? Beard goes away. His hair is black again now. He's like, let's fix those eyes of yours too. And he gives him his sight back.
Yeah.
And this really goes to show like what a strong man Reverend Watts is. He's like, no. I came about my ailments very fair. I've lived my life. I deserve these kinds of things. I don't want my sight back.
I like that a lot, actually.
He doesn't say it in the movie, but in the book he goes, he's a tough nut to crack. Like he's kind of hard to budge. He's like, I really thought giving a blind man his sight back would get him on my side.
Yeah.
But even then, he's a strong man who believes in the Lord, and so Martha Davis really loves him for that. He's a wonderful character as of that. So that's not working. The Crooked Man is running out of ideas here. So what's his next idea? He starts sending caskets from the graveyard around the church, just flying them like projectile missiles into the church.
Pretty dope.
Which is a pretty fun idea. This thing made me laugh very hard because as I was reading the book this morning, I was like, that's a funny line. They probably won't add that into the movie. They totally did. As the Crooked Man is kind of bantering with all the characters in the house, one of the witches outside of the house, out of nowhere, she's not said anything this whole time, looks at one of the graves in front of the ground. She's like, Abby something, blah, blah, blah. How does she get buried in a church? She poisoned 2 of her husbands. Like, that's it. That's the whole line. Such a funny line. I was like, there's no way they'll put that in the movie. They did. One of the characters remarks on the fact that one of the graves is like this woman who poisoned her 2 husbands.
And you would think that would be useful in some way, but
Not really.
Not really.
No. So now they're launching literal coffins into the church that are busting through the walls and landing in there. And it's basically just an all-out zombie attack of like sinners out onto this church, right? And it's pretty fun. Reverend then begs the Lord to take his eyes away. He's like, please, Lord, help me. I don't want these eyes. I don't want to see any more of this evil. And that does actually come to pass. He gains his age again. He's like, I don't want these gifts from the devil. Please return me to my former glory, I guess. And then he's like, he's a man-possessed. He's like, Tom, give me that lucky bone of yours. We're going to squeeze holiness into this vile, lucky bone that you have. And then it begins to glow with this heavenly light all of a sudden. It's a pretty neat effect. And he's a very impassioned man while they're doing this. And then they take that bone and they take a shovel and they carve this glowing symbol of a cross into the shovel, making it like this holy weapon. It's actually a pretty kick-ass.
It looks dope.
It's a really cool moment in the movie.
Sequence looked dope.
I really, really enjoyed it. So thus now they have this holy weapon. So now Hellboy takes his new weapon, cuts a swath through this whole zombie army in front of him, like one swoop, and then poof, they're all dead. Then he makes his way right up to the Crooked Man, just takes one mighty swing at him, and then he just like explodes in this passionate, like big lighting effect.
I thought the movie was over. Because I didn't know that the story continued, right?
Funny enough, I actually felt that way even the first time I read the book. I was like, okay, so this is it, right? The Crooked Man is dead now, right?
Yeah.
No, apparently, so it turns back into day now. You see the Crooked Man's clothes kind of crumpled up, and he's a crow, and he flies off into the distance.
Croak-ed Man.
He's the crow. Hey, that's pretty good. He's the Croak-ed Man. And then we'll make that joke again later after he dies, because then he's the Croak-ed Man. Get it?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay,
Well, he
so
might die.
We'll hold on to that. Well, he might die. You
Spoiler.
don't know. So the Crooked Man turns into a crow, flies away, right? So now their job is still not done, so Hellboy and Tom Farrell make their way to the Crooked Man's house alone. They literally, remember Bobby Joe, that character that's been super useful this whole time? They literally just push her to the side now. They're like, we're going to go do the rest of the movie. You're going to chill over here. So they're going to go to the Crooked Man's house alone. However, this is not something that's in the book. Bobby Joe actually has some plans now of her own to try to sabotage the Crooked Man. She's talking about how like the mine shaft tunnels under the town hold some kind of power for him. So she's like, I'm going to find a way to just like destroy this mine shaft, I guess.
Dude, I
like,
have no idea.
I don't really know exactly what her idea was. And so she's like, that's going to be my plan. And so Reverend Watts, who, by the way, I have to mention is giving a kick-ass performance.
He's great.
So he is the most believable actor in the entire movie.
Best part of the movie.
Yeah, whatever. What's Reverend Watts, that actor? His name is Joseph Marcel. Hats off to you. You gave the best performance in this entire
Thank you,
movie.
Mr. Marcel.
Hands down.
For kicking ass.
So it's the two of them now. So now you've got like Hellboy and Tom doing their thing, going to the Crooked Man. You've got Reverend Watts and Bobby Joe. They're going to go down into the tunnels and kind of do their own thing there. So while they're going down under these tunnels, they get attacked by this huge swarm of birds. And then the birds lift up, again, another use of the flying rig. It keeps
coming back.
They pick him up off the ground. He's flying in the air, and then they pluck out his eyes and his tongue and kill him. So it's kind of sad to see, especially since I really love that character. He actually doesn't die in the book as far as I remember. He lives throughout to the end of it. So they're doing that kind of thing. So they're in their own trouble. Meanwhile, at the house, Tom is having a battle with Effie Kolb in the Crooked Man's house here, which is fixed pretty fast because he just uses his lucky bone to just like blast her out of a window.
Fun fact: the guy who plays the what's his name? The
Reverend Watts.
Reverend Watts.
Yeah.
He is the butler from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
No,
he's in every single episode.
No
of
way.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That's incredible. Yeah. So the man's a seasoned actor. That's
He's
why
been.
this is happening.
He's been
Because
around.
there's a character or two in this movie who literally is like their first acting credit.
Yeah.
Like the actress that plays Cora Fisher, who
That was
didn't
her
really
first
do a
movie
lot.
ever.
First movie ever. Yeah, she doesn't really do a ton in this movie. You guys remember that spider from the very beginning of this movie? Remember how it ran away into the tunnels under the town? Well, it's back now to attack Bobby Joe. And again, it's not small anymore. Now it's huge. And then this is a strange thing. There was one short conversation between Bobby Joe and Cora Fisher, the witch, earlier in the movie, where she asks her, what do you do when you cast a spell? I've read books about it, blah, blah, blah. But like, what really makes it work for you as a witch? And basically the best advice that she gives her is like, well, I try to imagine the saddest thing. It really has to come from your heart. So anytime I'm casting like a hex on somebody or something like that, I imagine something incredibly sad. And that helps me channel the right emotion to cast this spell, right? So I guess that was just enough to give us to make it so Bobby Joe can now cast a spell. She, guess what? You'll never believe it. She starts to lift off the ground.
What?
As
the
she
flying
begins to,
rig?
as she begins to cast a spell on this spider, which also there's a sequence happening at the same time where Hellboy's in that dreamscape again, talking to his mother, and she's like, "Hellboy, please free me from this thing. You need to kill me with your gun." I guess it was kind of again, didn't love that sequence, but so these things are happening at once. Bobby Joe casts this spell, kills the spider in front of her, and also manages to break Hellboy out of his trance, which is good because he was pointing his gun at his mother when in reality it was pointed at his own head.
Yeah.
So like it would have been a really bad situation.
Somehow
right?
she managed to dispel the Crooked Man's spells.
Yeah.
Somehow.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense how this happened. Again, none of that is in the book.
Well, yeah,
all
'cause
of this
she's
is
not
added
in
for
the
the
book.
movie.
So obviously, I'm wondering if she's exists in other comics
Within
or
the
something.
world. Yeah, Bobby Joe Song. I
She
actually don't know
must.
if her
I'm gonna
character.
look.
Yeah. So now Hellboy is in the Crooked Man's house. He finally finds the room where the Crooked Man has been hiding away because after that fight at the church, getting hit with that holy weapon, he is weakened. Like he's not at full potential right now. So Hellboy sets fire to his house, and then in front of said fire, we see the wounded Crooked Man, who then pounces on Hellboy. They do battle again, which is mostly just Crooked Man like sending Hellboy flying around the house again, using that flight rig, getting their money's worth. That's for sure. And so the Crooked Man is like just about to kill Hellboy, I think, or at least he has him like kind of in a chokehold right now. And then Tom Farrell shows up, saving him by throwing a witch ball right into the Crooked Man's mouth. Like after this, Tom Farrell needs to go have like a baseball career or something like that.
Yeah,
Did you
dude.
find anything on Bobby Joe's song?
Yeah, you know what I found?
What's up?
She was created for this movie and only this
Kind of had a feeling that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So they're all fighting with the Crooked Man. Tom Farrell throws a witch ball, like pow, right in the kisser, and the Crooked Man just kind of swallows it, I guess, and it just like basically just does him in. He's done for at this point.
Yeah.
He's weakened. They throw him down a flight of stairs. It's actually kind of funny, like a video game character. Anytime he hits a stair on the staircase, money, coins start falling out of his mouth. It's like you know
He was
when
a brick from Mario.
Yes, exactly. Like he's a brick from Mario. So then lands at the bottom of the stairs. He tries to threaten them a little bit more, and then Hellboy just takes his big old gun, the Good Samaritan, and then shoots him right in the head.
There it is.
And the coins fly out of his head, and that's how he
It
dies.
really bothered me that they were all just pennies.
Yeah, it just kind of looks weird, right?
Yeah.
Like I wanted them to be like old like pirate coins
And
or something
maybe
like that.
they were. We just didn't get a good shot of it.
But I saw Abraham Lincoln on at least one of those coins.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But so I'll tell you guys, this is the weirdest thing for me. In the book, what happens is Hellboy takes his holy shovel, whacks into the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man disappears. And so they're like, okay, we got to go over to his house now, right? And I was like, oh, I thought that was the end of it. So I'm like, okay, so I guess there's another battle sequence coming up. No, they straight up go to his house and they walk into like one room and you see this like gross, mangled mess of like bug creatures and guts just like crumpled onto a table, and they're like, wow, it's kind of sad. Just like look at the sad state of this dude. And then Tom Farrell takes his lucky bone. Is like, here, you wanted it so bad, here you go. He like a cigarette, just like he flicks his bone onto the pile of mush that was once the Crooked Man, and he just like in a burst, just like disappears into like nothingness and dust.
So in the end, the Crooked Man got boned.
The Crooked Man got boned. Yes, the Croaked Man got boned.
The Crooked Man got boned.
The Croaked Man. That's pretty good. So that's how it happens in this one. The Crooked Man is now dead, and so after they've beaten this evil, Tom and Hellboy, they leave this house. As they're leaving, though, they hear some like kind of groans of upsetness from around this tree. Well, who's on the other side of this tree? It's Effie Kolb.
Oh, but
except
she's an old woman
she's an
now.
old elderly woman now, and she begs for their help. And then Tom's like, "Oh, I wondered why I was keeping this thing around." He pulls out that horse bit harness that he's been holding onto this whole time and puts it on her. So now the curse is being now it's your turn to be a horse. Now you're feeling a little horse. How about an apple for you? Hey, we've done all the horse bits. We've done all those jokes. So this is the moment that really kind of made me laugh. Tom and Hellboy literally at the same time are like, "Oh shit, Joe, back at the church. We gotta go." So they run back to
It seemed like the writers were like, "Oh shit, Joe!"
Exactly, because they kind of just did away with her after she dispelled the spell and killed the spider. They find her like kind of in a heap on the ground, and they're like, "Oh no, she's dead." And she's like, "No, I'm okay. Glad everything's good now." So she basically just like, "No, I had some help from the Reverend to get out of the tunnel and escape with the missing cargo." And she holds up a jar that's got the spider in it. She's like, "We did our field work, Hellboy. Job well done." It's like, okay, cool. I don't care about you or the spider, if I'm being entirely honest.
There was like this weird moment where she's like, "I had some help," and she looks off at the distance and like, you can't see anything in the distance,
No.
but you're supposed to think that he was standing there.
Because there's a moment where Reverend Watts is talking about how he saw the ghost of Cora Fisher, and then so now it goes in reverse, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, yeah, so now it's like, okay, she sees his ghost chilling in the church.
Yeah.
It's fine, I guess, right? So now Hellboy and Bobby Joe, they make their way out. They find a payphone in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Literally
they just find this one wooden payphone there, call for a helicopter lift out of this hellhole. But the shot of Hellboy in a helicopter,
No, dude.
horrible.
It was
It looks
terrible.
really, really bad. However, I was really hoping they would do this, and they did. The final panel of the comic book and the final shot of the movie are the exact same thing, where it is a shot of Effie Kolb, who is now a horse, in red letters and red paint written on the side of her, just says, "Beware, I am a witch." And that's the final shot of the movie, final shot of the book. I really, really enjoyed this. But before it ends, there's one final jump scare title card with the Crooked Man's face behind it, and now the movie is done.
Yeah, of course. You
Super
forgot to
weird.
mention that they cuddled.
Oh.
Joe and Hellboy like cuddle on the helicopter. It's super cute.
Yeah, there's one moment
They're
where, like,
madly in love.
She kind of just like
apparently.
rests her head on his shoulder, and it's like, I don't really know what you were intending to do with these characters. If you wanted them to be romantic interests at all, like it's just, I don't know. I want obviously more female characters in these movies and such, but like I wanted her to be written better.
It didn't. I mean, it literally could have been any character,
Yes.
and we would be complaining about it, right? It doesn't.
No, it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm sad that they added her and she was pretty useless throughout
Yeah,
this whole
she
thing.
could have been useful, but instead, I'm struggling to find reason for her existence.
Honestly, exactly. So that is Hellboy, the Crooked Man.
Yeah, boy.
Bam, we did it. Let's talk about our expectations for this one.
Yeah.
My very first one said, just like we've been talking about the entire time, the added agent of Bobby Joe will be useless, completely useless to the story. I wish they had either done a better job at writing her or just not had her in the movie at all. Like, I'm sorry, everything that happened with her was not useful. It was pointless. It didn't add anything.
A strong attempt. Yeah, it felt like there was some passion there, but it got so lost it was hard to keep track of any of the plot.
Really, though. I said some fun direct from comic moments, and yes, I'll give it that. There were some things that they did really, really well, like the part with the raccoon crawls in the skin, and pretty much all of the church scene were like really like spot on. I really enjoyed those moments.
Cheesy special effects. Oh my god, so cheesy.
Oh yeah,
there was
kidding me?
moments where they looked good, but so much of it just faded into the background.
Yeah, there's a lot of those like forgettable about this movie, which is kind of sad, right? I said it was going to have more horror than any other Hellboy iteration we've gotten so far, and it really felt like that's what kept this movie up on its own 2 feet, you know?
Yeah.
They leaned into that gritty folk horror with the Crooked Man story, and I think that is what helped it, because I think it needed it.
Yeah, I agree. The cinematography reminiscent of a fan film, yes.
No,
all
totally.
the way. Like almost all of it.
But-
the shots that looked like the panels did look really,
Yes,
really
I was
good.
going to say, there were a couple moments that we were like, no, that's pretty good cinematography.
Yeah, or like when the Reverend was dying and he was being held up by the birds.
Yes,
and, he was,
and
like, in
there's
a cross.
lights and these birds.
That
all
looked
over.
really cool.
There's some really good shots. There's also some fun like camera things they did. Like for instance, the first time you see the Crooked Man, his head is up straight and then it cocks to the side to give him that like the crooked neck, right? And the camera tilts alongside with his head.
I did like
it was
that.
a fun effect, right? So
Yeah,
there
that was
were good things inside of it, but no, you're right.
But
On
as
the
a
whole,
whole, the movie felt like it was a fan film.
Absolutely, absolutely. I said there were going to be some good practical moments, and they had a few really good practical effects that I did love. Like the Crooked Man himself looked perfect, and I still can't stop thinking about that flesh suit. Like, God, that looked good. However, that means all of the CGI stuff, not so good. That snake, not so good. The spider from the beginning, even worse. Really bad stuff.
For sure. No scares at all. And it was so jam-packed with just random things.
And random
like,
jump scares, too.
Yeah, random thing. We were nullified to it in the first scene.
Oh, totally.
With the spider. So like any other attempt at it through the remainder of the movie just failed. And that was really unfortunate.
Yeah. I said it was going to be obvious that they had a low budget throughout the movie, right? And like, I'd say this movie certainly had its moments of greatness, but those were pretty much always cut quickly because of some obvious like bad CGI or camera work that didn't feel so good. So like that and some pretty rough dialogue throughout it gave it like that B-movie feel for sure. It like kept reminding me that this is kind of a budget Hellboy movie.
Yeah. A messy plot, and goddamn, it was a mess. And I really do think a lot of this had to do with the fact that it was written by someone who's used to writing graphic novels.
They flow differently.
And it just flows differently. And there were so many things that it was just jumping back and forth. It was really hard to follow.
Yes.
We gave this to you in such a concise way that like you don't get while you're watching the movie.
I know, like I feel like I had an advantage because I know the plot through the book, right, which tells it in a much more concise, streamlined, appropriate way.
Yeah.
This one, it kind of cuts in weird, like there's not enough time given to these things. They've added other weird things, so the story is a bit harder to follow and care about in this one as well. Should we discuss our surprises?
Yeah.
So my surprises here, Jack Kesey was doing decent as Hellboy, but this iteration was such a skeptical asshole this whole time, which is kind of weird. Like, I didn't mention it much that, like, throughout the whole thing, he's kind of laughing at anybody that believes in, like, the witches and the supernatural and stuff. Like, my brother in Christ, your entire bureau that you work for works in paranormal things. Why are you acting like such a skeptic who doesn't believe in these things? And he's just kind of a dick the whole time. So, like, he was honestly kind of hard to like. It was almost like Hellboy, but it wasn't Hellboy at the same time.
I agree.
We didn't mention this. There was good use of the music throughout. Like, remember how we mentioned the 50s music? It came back a couple times in pretty fun ways.
Yeah.
Like, there were actually a couple of fun, like, needle drop moments from these 50s, like, jams that I actually really enjoyed to help, like, the action sequences. There was one fun one in, like, the zombie fight in the church that I really, really enjoyed. I really like that they did keep a lot of the story intact, though, like, the deviations from the original story felt a little pointless. I didn't enjoy those very much, but, like, I do like that, like, as a whole, the story stayed mostly intact. I was able to recognize it, though I do feel like I was able to follow it better than you because you haven't read the book, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Reverend Watts was the best character in the whole thing. He was certainly a shock for me. From the moment he came on screen, I was like, this guy's giving it. And then he kept giving it. I loved him. Thank you, Mr. Marcel, for doing a wonderful job. Great work in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then there were just, my final surprise is that there were some pretty good cinematography moments. Not as a whole, but just some really standout moments for sure.
Absolutely. The folds on Hellboy's costume, man. That was such a shock to me. I couldn't believe that they did that.
Ah, boy.
The absolute lack of scary moments or even any tension at all. I just didn't feel it at all.
Oh, yeah.
How much fun the preacher was. He was great. The comic panel shots, like you were saying,
super
like
fun.
I think that they were really, really fun.
Yeah, there were some were literally like straight ripped from the page, which I really
and you
loved.
could feel it. Even though I haven't read the comic book, I still was like, okay, that was
you can tell
that was a graphic
the
novel.
composition of a shot makes sense. It would translate to a comic book.
Absolutely. And then finally, the lore of the Croak-ed Man. I did like it a lot. I wish it was explored a little bit more instead of just like a little flashback. But I did like it.
Yeah. So. Let's discuss our verdicts here.
Dude.
This one was tough. I'm gonna give it this ranking, but it like just barely passes into this range here. I'm gonna give it that was horrible.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel though this wasn't a perfect adaptation of Hellboy and far from my favorite, I think it was done decently and it had some good horror moments in it that were fun to watch. Like, the sequence of the raccoon coming back into the skin. The Croak-ed Man looked really, really cool. I really liked. There were a lot of good horror moments in it. So because of those things, I kind of want to give it this score. So like maybe it's just the Hellboy fanboy in me, but like I enjoyed myself throughout this one. I found myself appreciating it more than I was expecting because again, my expectations were pretty on the floor. And maybe that's why I had a pretty good time with it, just because of that.
Maybe.
But weirdly, like not for any of the Hellboy content. Again, I was mostly here for the horror stuff that they added into it and really leaned into that. So, call me possessed by the devil, but I kind of liked Hellboy the Croak-ed Man. I give it like 2.5 to 3 lit demon cigarettes.
Okay. For me, that was forgettable.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that this movie ended up how it did. There was so much potential in the source material. The characters were decent, but the lack of a cohesive plot, some really weird directing choices led to an experience that just won't stick with me for too long after. Go watch the animated films and the Guillermo del Toro movies if you want a good Hellboy experience. Maybe stay out of the mind for this one. It's getting 1.5 spider legs.
Okay, that's not bad.
You took the cigarette one.
Sorry, that was a good one. He just had so many cigarettes. Instead of a kill count for this movie, we should have had a cigarette count for how many of those he puts out throughout the entire movie.
I mean, this movie had like 1 death or 2, but all the other ones were corpse. They were already dead. Do zombies count?
Hello, it's me.
Lord.
It's Heaven Boy. I've come back. On my way out, the last time I ran into a bat, I think I killed him.
Oh, you're not bringing Count
I
Trivia
think he's dead. He's not moving anymore, so I thought I could get, you guys are big, strong grown-ups.
Oh.
So could you take this bat from me?
Yes.
This is Count Trivia, right? I'm holding Count Trivia in my hands right now, this bat that he's just handed me.
It absolutely is Count Trivia.
He's going to be fine. I'm just going to put him over here. And underneath
he's got
him,
a little card.
Underneath him are these, there's the trivia cards.
Bleh, bleh.
Thank you very much, the Heaven Boy.
No problem. I'm going to fly away again now.
Oh man, they're using that rig one more time, huh?
One more time, gotta make him fly. So the trivia on this one, it was reported to have a $20 million budget, which is the lowest of all 4 of the adaptations, which I mean, again,
Makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Unlike the other 3 live-action Hellboy films, Mike Mignola, creator of the character, received a credit on this film for co-writing the screenplay. He has been very outspoken for his dislike for some of the creative choices in the first 3 films, which is kind of interesting because I adore them, really.
Oh, yeah, me too.
At least the first 2 I adore. However, he did receive story credit for Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, which was also Guillermo del Toro, despite not having any involvement in the actual screenplay, and has still been outspoken about his disappointment in the final product. So Mike Mignola, apparently not a big fan of the first 3 Hellboy movies, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Jack Kesey was 36 during filmmaking, making him the youngest actor to play Hellboy in a live-action film, surpassing David Harbour, who was 42 when he filmed Hellboy in 2019. So it was 2019.
Damn, you always think that, like, I'm like 30, right? And I'm like, I've lost it. There's no way I can make it.
36? You could be the next Hellboy. Could be the youngest Hellboy.
I'm going to do it. No, I'm not.
In an interview with NovaStream, director Brian Taylor stated that the title sequences weren't planned out. He designed the title himself from home because the film ran out of money. So he used his After Effects and Photoshop skills to design the title sequence. He wanted to give the film a hammer horror kind of 70s folk horror feeling going on, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Them running out of money explains so much.
So much is explained just with that sentence there. And then finally, something we kind of already talked about, director Brian Taylor clarified that producer Jonathan Younger didn't use AI to replace a practical creature in this movie, but Younger did use AI for The Offering 2022.
And make sure I never watch The Offering.
Just going to write that down. Never going to watch The Offering for 2022. But that's our time. That's our hellish time throughout all of Hellboy, the Crooked Man. I would agree with Derek. It is a pretty forgettable movie. I'm happy that it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to. So like my spirits are a bit higher as a result of that. But yeah, that was our movie there. Let us know if you decide you want to go check it out. Next week, we've got another fun movie from 2024, also released this year.
Yeah, this was actually our buddy Seth's dad watched this movie and told us to watch it.
So you guys got to check this one out.
We're going to check it out. It's called The Mousetrap from 2024. Looks like it's trying to cash in on that old
Blood and
park
Honey
slasher style.
Yeah, exactly. Main character comes into the public domain.
Yeah, of course. So
sitting at a 20%
on Rotten Tomatoes. It's Alex's 21st birthday, but she's stuck at the amusement arcade on a late shift. So her friends decide to surprise her, but a masked killer dressed as Mickey Mouse decides to play a game of his own with them, which she must survive.
So yes, please join us next week for Mousetrap from 2024, sitting at a 20%. We will be checking that one out. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. There's already a couple iterations of the Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse specifically being turned into horror characters. Like we have this one. Actually, David Howard Thornton is playing an iteration of Mickey Mouse in a movie called Screamboat, which is kind of funny. So there's a couple of these. We'll check out at least this one. We'll see if we go to other ones. Now, before we send you on your way, it is time for your bi-weekly Garfield horror scope. Derek, have you had enough time to peruse our comic here?
I have, and I have to say I really enjoy it.
You're having a great time.
I think it's one of the best Garfield comics in recent memory.
It's a very spooky themed one this time. We have Garfield and a ghost interacting with each other.
Go to gocomics.com and look up the October 27th, 2024 Garfield.
Very spooky.
This one brought me a lot of joy.
Derek just really likes this one. Derek, what do you want to be
I'm
this week?
definitely the sheet ghost.
You're gonna the sheet ghost, the one there?
Yeah.
I will be the two judgy sheet ghosts here. Right. So basically the gist of what's happening here is Garfield has a ghost trying to scare him, and the ghost doesn't scare him. Garfield is just really interested in the thread count on his sheet for some reason, and they become buddies.
It's like Jim Davis, I thought he was going to die. I was worried about him retiring or something.
Though?
He's popping off with this shit.
He's popping off with this shit.
This is the funniest comic I've read.
So yeah, then
I am enthralled.
Garfield decides to then take a nap using the sheet ghost as like a blanket, and then his two buddies come in here. They're like, "You're pathetic," and he's like, "Shh, you wake my new friend."
Yeah.
It's cute. It's a cute comic. So tell me about the sheet ghost.
So the sheet ghost, he comes in and he tries to scare Garfield. Garfield isn't scared. He's like, "You're a sheet."
He's a strong man,
and he's like, "Okay, what's your thread count?" This ghost, he obviously wanted to make an impression on Garfield.
Yeah.
He didn't know what it was.
No.
He came in and he was like, maybe I want to scare him.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, I couldn't.
I mean, I think he came in with the expectation, right? Society has pushed on him that he's a ghost. He needs to be scary.
Exactly.
He hadn't even explored the possibility of making this connection this way.
No, exactly. And now he's met someone who is taking the time to learn about him, learn about his ancestry, learn about who he is, what defines him as a ghost, as a sheet ghost. And it is a beautiful story of love, of companionship, and it's something that we can take into our daily lives. Take the time to get to know the people around you.
Yes.
Don't judge them immediately on the fact that they're trying to scare you. Maybe someone's holding up a gun to you at a parking lot. Don't ignore that. Find out where they come from. Ask them about their thread count.
I don't know about that one. That one might put you in a pickle. If there's a man trying to kill you, ask about their thread count.
I mean, I've always heard, like, if you're in a threatening situation, tell someone your name.
Oh?
Yeah, like if someone comes up to you and they're like trying to mug you.
Yeah.
You humanize
Say, hello,
yourself.
my name is Derek.
Ask them what their name is and tell them your name.
That's
because
fair.
in that situation,
then they think about you as a
humanizes it.
person who has a whole life.
So there's like the three. There's like you fight, you run. If you can't run, you hide. If you can't hide, you fight. Right, and fight.
Yes.
Fight is the last one.
Yeah.
Well, for me, there's 4.
Okay.
You either run, you either hide, you tell them your fucking name, and if that doesn't work, then you fight.
Then you fight. Yeah. Okay. So there's a secret 2.5 step there. And this week, I will be the 2 judgy ghosts that walk into the very last panel of this comic. And I'm going to use this as an example of what not to do in this situation. Because just as we've discussed here, this ghost has made a new friend. They had an experience they were not expecting. They kept a very open mind in the situation, made a new friend. They are really enjoying themselves being the blanket to Garfield. Who are you to be these 2 judgy ghosts walking into the last panel? You don't know this situation. You don't know what happened here. Just because society has told you that if you're a sheet ghost and you're not scaring people, you're failing. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. There's so much more to these things. Open your eyes, you judgy sheet ghosts. Don't do this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
you know?
it's ridiculous.
You don't know the whole story here, you know? Allow people to enjoy their thing. Let them be happy. This sheet ghost ain't hurting anybody. In fact, he's helping somebody, right? So don't come in here and tell him that he's doing a bad job. Don't call him pathetic. You're the pathetic one.
Probably the first time in the sheet ghost's life that he's felt accepted.
Yes. Honestly.
So it's
because even if he successfully scared Garfield and went about his day, he's not gonna that's not gonna be a lasting thing, you know. It's not a new,
he's just
fresh,
gonna go on
fun
and do it
feeling
again.
for him. Yeah, he's just gonna. It's a short thrill, you know. But this is a long lasting. He's made a connection here with Garfield, and I hope to see him again in later iterations of the comic.
He probably won't, which is really disappointing.
No,
because, definitely, as I mentioned, the best Garfield comic I think in recent memory.
You know what really scares me?
People not going to our social
Exact. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
You set it up, knocked it out of the park.
I just like, you know, if no one tells, if you're not telling your friends about this podcast, what are you doing?
That scares us, you know?
It's terrifying.
It's scary to think of no one listening to this podcast. That's what scares me
My worst fear.
So please, if you want to help us with that very scary thing, go check us out on all of our social medias. We are on Instagram at _was_horrible, Twitter at TWH Podcast, Facebook at That Was Horrible Podcast, YouTube at That Was Horrible, and TikTok at That Was Horrible as well. We are currently working on trying to get our Not So Horrible episode about Terrifier 3 up, so you can actually physically, you could watch the whole thing of us actually sitting in the chairs and doing it.
That's going to be a normal thing.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I liked it.
I think they're fun. Yeah,
we're
going to
have actual
that.
full visual of the Not So Horribles. They'll still be available for podcast.
Currently
viewing,
in the
but
works. You know, if you're listening to this in like
look
3
at our
years,
smug
it's
little
hopefully
faces.
up by now. But thank you as always for joining us here on That Was Horrible. It has been a great time having you. As always, Garfield be with you. Stay spooky.
Goodbye.